We're ready whenever you are.
All right. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce Leah at the beginning somewhere.
Sure. Well, we'll probably do that just first thing. Okay. Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order for Cook County Board of Commissioners regular meeting. 8:34 a.m. Tuesday, November 9th, 2021. Please rise and join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And as a small adjustment to the agenda, we'd like to add an introduction for Leah Eckstrom and probably put that before item 4, the closed session, but immediately after the consent agenda. We'll call it 3.5 if that's okay. Are there any other adjustments to the agenda? Hearing or seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Sullivan.
I move to approve the agenda as revised.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We have a motion. Is there support?
Storley support.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. Motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Motion passes unanimously. That moves us on to the public comment period. And this is a time for any member of the public to speak to the county board on any issue. I don't think we have any members of the public wishing to speak this morning. Do we have any written comments? Either Commissioners, Administrator York, you'd like to share?
Mr. Chairman, I've received no written comments.
Okay. Well, then I'll close the public comment period and move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items a commissioner would like to remove from the consent agenda?
I would like to discuss items I and J.
Okay. Very good. We'll put the Firewise under Auditor, I presume. And then that's item I, and then item J, probably under, Administrator, I think. That's okay.
Certainly.
Yep. Maybe we'll just put those straight away on each section. All right. So we have an amended consent agenda. I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Thank you, Commissioner Saulson. We have a motion. Is there support?
Sullivan supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. I have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Very good. On to item 3.5. Introduction of Leah Eckstrom.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, Commissioners and members of the public. It gives me great pleasure to introduce this morning our new Human Resources Director, Leah Eckstrom. Leah has been with the county for 7 years, I believe, right? And was previously in the county attorney's office. So it's another instance of robbing Peter to pay Paul, but we saw an opportunity to promote Leah into this position. She comes to us with a lot of experience with county human resources policy by virtue of having been president of the Cook County Employees Association. She's very sharp, a very quick learner, and we're very happy to have her in this role. And I would welcome Leah to come up now and just say a few words.
Yeah, well, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to working with everyone, all the commissioners and department heads and staff, and yeah, jumping in. So, week 2, here I come. So,
Yeah.
all right.
I should mention, we have currently 12 vacancies,
Yes.
and so, which I think is probably a record for the organization. We, like many organizations across the country, are experiencing a lot of churn in terms of people leaving the organization for various reasons. We've had retirements, we've had people move out of the area, and so it's a very challenging time from a human resources perspective. And, you know, it's really baptism by fire for Leah, because she's coming in at a challenging time, but she's already started really just diving in and addressing our needs in terms of recruitment. She's providing support to Kathy Polly, who's our human resources generalist, who prior to Leah's start on November 1st had been doing all the recruitment stuff essentially by herself. And so really glad to have Leah on board, and look forward to having her report to this board on a regular basis about our progress in filling those openings.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Leah, for stepping up. Really appreciate it, and much needed.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, no,
Need to keep
no.
you
Nope, looking forward to it.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
That moves us on to item number 4, closed session. We have a legal matter, outside counsel presentation, vote to close session. And when we do that, we need to specify a specific why there. And it's the strategy arising from the current lawsuit filed by Julie Coleman against Cook County. We need a motion, though, to enter the closed session.
Mr. Chair?
Mhm.
I'd like to move that pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.05 Subdivision 3B, the meeting should be closed by motion under the attorney-client privilege to discuss legal issues, legal advice, and litigation strategy arising from the lawsuit filed by Julie Coleman against Cook County.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We have a motion. Is there support?
Swallowson supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Swallowson. Motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. We are now in closed session. I presume we're going to the
ITV.
ITV.
Correct.
April, will you just chat with me for something and you have to come back? Yeah. Thank you.
How are you doing? Yeah?
How are you guys doing?
Good. Yeah.
Preparing for a maybe winter storm this weekend? Who knows?
Who knows? That was a funny thing. I was talking with them this morning. I go in early on Tuesdays, just the crew is there and stuff before they start, just to say hi and see how things are going. And yeah, everyone's like, well, we're either going to be grading the roads because it's raining,
Right.
or plowing them. It's one of the two.
It's been such a weird fall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been weird. Do you get out in the woods at all for deer hunting?
I don't.
No, our oldest son who just moved up here wants to do all that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
A place to start, if you need somewhere to start, 'cause this is where I started to hunt up here, was Cascade State Park.
Oh.
Yeah. They offer, it's 100 permits a year to go hunt in the park. It's free, but you need your regular like deer license, and so you just show them that, and you go hunt in the park for free. It's basically just first come, first serve. I think they opened it up a few weeks ago, and it's literally like an 8.5 by 11. You just drive over to Cascade, you write your name down, sign it, here's my email, and then they give you a piece of paper, and that's the end of it.
Oh, nice.
Super cool. But yeah, it's been kind of cool. I hunted there last year and got one, so I'll take that.
Nice.
Yeah. But I don't know if, yeah, if he doesn't have anywhere to start, at least it's a chunk of land.
Mm-hmm. Any plans for the holidays coming up? Really?
Nothing. Actually, nothing. We are purposely doing nothing. We, Thanksgiving, you know, was, so my wife's from Pennsylvania. So for the first couple of years we were dating, it was a lot of back and forth on the holidays. And then, you know, airfare that time of year, and it's just obnoxious. It's too much. And so we decided Thanksgivings we were just gonna like not do anything, just be us. You know, if some friends want to show up, fine, but that's it. And that's been really good. Christmas we'll do something. The last year we hosted my whole family to come up here. I think we're gonna do that again. So yeah, it was fun. My sister just had a baby, so it's like our first like nephew on this side.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, no, he's funny, but I think he's, oh boy, I should know this. August, so what's that? October, 3 months.
That's very nice.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know where we are, but yeah, it's probably that. What about you guys? Do you travel out or stay
We
put?
don't, we stay home.
Yeah, that's the smart play. It just gets so hectic sometimes.
Yeah, we do our own things good at the house.
Oh,
Hi, what's the word?
just hanging out. Everyone left us.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
Closed session, that's the deal. So they're in the other room.
That's what I hear.
What are you doing for the holidays? That's what we were just talking about.
We don't know.
Too early.
My wife has a pretty small, she's only got one brother,
Okay.
so her folks are considering doing the Thanksgiving dinner.
Are they up here
No, down Barnum,
or? Ooh, where's that?
down south of the Moose Lake.
Oh, okay, sure. It's a little poke.
Yeah, so we might, I don't know, we can't make up our mind,
That's fair.
I guess. I mean, everybody's vaccinated and,
Sure.
you know, it's a small group, but.
Sometimes it's just tough. I want to drive 3 hours, 2 hours, whatever it is, you know?
Well, it just works out because Carmen has a hair appointment the day before. And we do like to hit the Menards Black Friday shit sale.
Yep, that's fair.
So we'd go down and then just come right back and then I have a meeting in Duluth the following Monday and I don't want to spend the whole weekend down there. And
I was gonna say,
And then I
yeah.
have to go back on Monday and
So it's either a lot of driving.
then I got a doctor's appointment in Duluth on Tuesday.
Jeez, move down there. Find a rental.
Don't move down there.
Yeah,
We
please
do
don't.
have, we do have property though.
Do ya?
Yeah.
Well, shoot, there you go.
Just in the form of a camper at this point.
Well, it might be a little chilly
It
for
might
a
be little
camper.
chilly for that, yeah.
Yeah.
But, and my mom lives down there.
Yeah.
I stay with her and
It's nice.
visit sometimes.
That makes it easier than to make the trip.
Yeah, yeah. And Carmen has 4 kids and they all live down there in that area. It's okay to live.
Sounds like you're going to Duluth for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think there's no getting out of it.
No, probably not. That's fair. That's pretty funny.
No, I just wanted to thank you for your work on getting the road back for the tribe.
Oh, yeah. No, I think it's, when I met with Bobby and, Kurt, have you ever worked with Kurt, Slepet? I think that's how it is. At the BIA, he's kind of like the.
Oh, yep.
I think he's their roads engineer.
Yep.
And so I had just broached the topic one day. Actually, what was funny is I had it written on my whiteboard, which is behind me in my camera. And so I was talking with them about a different project. And so the only thing I had written on there was, I think, turnover 17 or something like that, like one of the other roads up there. And Bobby, clearly it's bigger on screen than it is when I see it. And so he's like, what's that with 17? And I was like, well, do you want to talk about it? So 17, you know, so we looked at all the roads that were up there. And there's obviously trade-offs with, you know, what can they maintain, what will do the public the most good.
Right.
You know, because there's certain stretches of 17 that are like, you know, like the stuff that was just paved, for example, like that stretch is so low traffic.
Right.
And so we're like, well, how do we, you know, what about that chunk? And then, you know, what about all these other pieces, you know, and probably not the pieces through the park, because that's very heavily trafficked,
Right.
you know, or Store Road. So the issue with actually the part that just got paved is we can't turn it over because it's like highway turnback miles. It's some like weird statute written, it's like buried in stuff. Because I had talked to state aid about it, you know, Amended, to just say, hey, you know, I know there's kind of some rules with this, what can I do? And what can't I do? And so, yeah, there's that 17 Mineral Center Road and Old Highway 61, we can't flip that over because, yeah, I know, and I was like, huh. But 89, nothing popped up, and so I was like, all right, why not?
Good, yeah.
And it was this bizarre thing where both, you know, and talking with Lisa, just to run some numbers on it to see, like, what are we actually spending? And I think it's in there, but it was something like, spend anywhere from like 26 to 47 grand annually on that dead end stretch. And I was like, holy crap. And even Lisa was like, I didn't realize it was that much.
Right, yeah.
You know, MnDOT pays us like $5 to keep it open. And we're like, whatever. And so, yeah, so in talking, so figuring that out, and then kind of Bobby and Kurt being like, yeah, that seems like a good chunk. So, off it goes.
Yeah, I've been up here for going on 11 years, and that's been talked about for
Oh, yeah?
going on 11 years.
Well, it wasn't, you know, it's funny because you're like, all right, like, how do we do this?
Right.
You know, and so, you know, you can read in the statutes a bit, and it's like the jurisdiction change is easier than, like, just vacating a road. So when it's like this, then basically it's just a resolution, and then we even did the, you know, the memorandum of MOU, whatever, to flip it over, and they had their attorney look at it, and Molly looked at it, and we just kind of, whatever.
No, that's great.
It's a little more it's not too much more complicated than you take it over. All right, cool, shake, done.
Right.
It's about as close to that as you can get. Yeah. Good, why not?
Yeah.
It's a start, it's something. But yeah, all the other ones we looked at just didn't, either we can't, or, you know, they're just so heavily trafficked and there's, you know, they don't have the means to take care of it.
Right.
And it's already county road, so we're like, all right, well, let's just.
Right, and now that they're all fixed up nice, and
Yep.
that other dirt section is just so beautiful to drive on.
Exactly.
Compared to what it used to be.
That's what I've heard, yeah. So, yeah, kind of a goofy one, but doing something.
Get anybody to plow snow up there yet?
Nah. Not yet, I know, and we have another guy leaving, he just put in his 2 weeks, we've known about it.
Right.
But yeah, so we'll have 2 openings now, one down here and now one up in Hoagland. Yeah, I don't know, I think one of our mechanics is gonna be, I think, on that duty, and then we're short, you know, mechanic help, and yeah, I don't know, it's bizarre.
It really is bizarre.
Yeah, and it's not just us. When I was meeting with other folks in district, well, the Arrowhead, every county's going through it. The pay issues, the training issues, finding anybody, dropping the A requirement to a B, and then, you know, hopefully get an A later. Some counties are toying with like paying for classes, you know, which we don't do. Yeah, it's.
Oh, I believe it.
You know, yeah, I don't know. Josh was pulling up comparable salaries, truck driving salaries in the area. You know, and we were down here, and everybody else is up here. And I'm like, it's so far out of our hands, though.
So to get somebody to come up here is
impossible.
Just about impossible.
It is. That's why I'm like, I want to go to the high school and recruit, because at least those kids, their parents live here, and they could live with them. Yeah. You know, it's a starting point. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, because that was the idea you had, was like, let's do that. Make them sign like a 3-year or a 5-year thing. At least just stay put for a while.
Yeah.
But God, when they can just go like be a carpenter or go do something else for more money. It's hard to sell a 19-year-old kid on a benefits package.
Yeah.
You know, they don't care. Maybe, even if I get one, you know.
Maybe not 19, but once you get into that early 20s and they've been out a little bit and they come back and they realize how hard life really is.
Exactly.
They might be like,
Like,
oh, okay.
retirement is important, time
Yeah.
off is important, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I don't know. It is bizarre though with all of, like, it's not, obviously the whole organization having so many open. Wild.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, maybe it's just the right time for everybody or something, I don't know.
Yeah, if you can't get a job nowadays, you don't want one.
Yeah, yeah, well, with how everything's open, yeah. Yeah, we'll see, I guess.
We were teasing, me and Rowan were teasing James last week. And we were talking about retirement, and I said, well, my wife and I very much disagree when I should retire. She's 8 years younger than me, and she
Sure.
thinks I should keep working until she can retire.
Oh.
I'm like, well, that ain't happening.
No, that's a lot longer.
But-
What, are you gonna call it here pretty soon? No. 6 months?
Like 4 years.
That's fair. That's a good chunk of time.
That's good. And now I want to remind you that this is all on being recorded.
Yeah, it's all recorded.
So
Everyone
if
heard
it's-
that.
If it's less than 4 years, I can go back and be like, no, he said 4
Yeah, you
years.
said 4 years. Get back here, Mike.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
fine.
so I said, I was telling James that, and he goes, no, you don't get to retire.
Nobody.
He's like, we've had it out for retirement for
Yeah.
a while.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, nobody can retire for a long time.
Meanwhile, me and Rowan were looking at this, or the person that, it's a program, it's a federal program that the state of Minnesota also adopted.
Hmm.
It's like for my work cell phone.
Oh, okay.
If there was an emergency, your
Mhm.
phone wouldn't work, but mine would.
Oh.
Mine takes priority, you know, like the sheriff's phone.
Sure, okay.
First responders'
Sure.
phones work.
Interesting.
And anyway, it's a huge federal program, federally funded a lot of money,
Yeah.
and there was a job posting came up. And I told you, I told him, I said, you don't know, if the right job comes up, I could be gone too.
Well,
You know.
it's as much a personal decision as it is, you
It was
know.
the same day that job posting, but it's kind of like being in the military. You have to kind of work around the country before you can get back to where you want to be.
You don't want to do that.
It starts at about 130 grand a year.
Jeez, maybe you want to do that. Holy shit.
Starts.
That's wild.
It's basically, they want an emergency manager, brand new position.
Wow. So where do you have to go around the country and then they put you back here eventually?
Yep. So you don't really know where you.
Sure.
You here and there and all over.
I suppose it depends how long the here and there and all over is. You know, is it like 3 months of insane travel and then you come back?
Right.
I don't know.
It's just around the end of my, wrong timing, for if I was 10 years younger, I would do it for that.
Yep.
But,
Oh, that's funny. That was something kind of similar in, I think it was Roseau County, northwest Minnesota. They couldn't find, forever, I don't think they had an engineer for a long time. And so they finally, I think they did something, they changed the salary or whatever the hell it was, but it was like, starting was like 120 to 140 starting, which would make that person, I think either the highest or like the second highest paid engineer in the state. Roseau County, yeah. And so they finally, I think the person they hired was fine, like they're not even licensed. So they still have to take their test and stuff, you know, but I was just like, Jesus Christ, like that's how hard it is to like find, so I was like, shit, if I was single, 100%, I'll deal with that for 3 years and then go somewhere else. You know, God. I would not subject the spouse to that area though. There's nothing to do, nothing against it, it's nothing to do.
yeah, there's a good friend of mine, he's actually our regional planner.
Okay.
For our regional association of emergency management.
Mm-hmm.
Contractor. he's been doing it for like 5 years, and he started his own company. And then he hired a couple people, but he wanted a Native American
Sure.
person for training purposes with some emergency management background.
Okay.
And we beat it around for a long time, but, and on my truck, it would just be in the area.
At least you're here.
Wouldn't be traveling to, New York or something.
Sure.
And
Funny.
I beat that around for a long time too.
It's tough.
Just the retirement end of it and
Yeah.
benefits.
Just coast into it. Path of least resistance.
And it might be something, as a retirement plan, I'd go out and teach some classes, here and there. But,
That's not a bad idea.
make a couple bucks. But
Just a couple.
if I had Tim Nelson's money, I wouldn't even be thinking of it.
I mean, if we all had Tim's money, right?
If you had
Oh,
$10
hey,
money,
hey.
you'd be standing on a corner down there with little cardboard
Yeah.
signs, and every little bit helps.
That's funny. How long do these closed sessions go for typically? It's just whatever?
It depends, that's the wild card.
Oh.
And I will tell you, that we're still feeding live, so all what you guys were saying is,
I wasn't joking when I said it's being.
Good.
I thought it was. It's live?
it's
Yeah.
live, it's
Oh, shoot.
captured.
All right. Well, good.
That's all I could tell us, oh, okay, good, Robbie's there.
Yeah. He'll say all this.
Can't see anything, but you can sure hear everything.
Oh, funny.
So, I couldn't hear what you were saying before I came over.
Oh, good.
Okay,
Okay.
not very well.
Well, it starts
I
out,
wasn't joking when I said.
I know.
I thought you were, because I thought the closed thing said, oh, they just turn off? Streaming the session.
That's
Oh,
what
but they just go to a
They have
different
to go to a
room.
different room.
Ew.
Because this room doesn't have the technological advancements that a lot of other boardrooms have, to where we can shut a live stream and then restart it and have it pick right back up, so we have to continue to stream it.
I get you now.
could
Okay.
turn off the sound system and then turn
It
it
would
back
still
on.
could do it.
Oh, does
Go
it?
ahead.
That's how I knew you were here.
Great.
I can hear you
I
on.
don't think I've said anything stupid,
No.
so. it should be
You're okay. You're okay.
Well, at
Yeah,
least
April's
this
not
time it
doing
didn't
one
run
of
for,
these.
April will keep us in line.
we let our meeting run for, what was it, 22 hours? We had our planning commission board.
Oh,
of
we forgot to
adjustment.
shut the live stream off?
Well, Diana thought she had shut it off twice, but she didn't, but it went 22 hours.
Oh
and
my
then
God.
The feed wasn't even recoverable after that.
That's just that gigantic.
Yeah,
That's funny.
yeah, because Kirk thought, well, just get it and cut it down, and because after the first couple hours, then it's done, and you just cut the rest of it off, but he couldn't even recover any of that.
Oh my God.
It was just too huge.
That's really funny.
And I know nobody's gonna say anything.
I know. I'm nervous. As long as, yeah, I guess as long as we're not screaming, then it won't be too bad. That's fine. Did you guys get out in the woods at all this weekend?
What?
Get out? You get out in the woods this past weekend?
I didn't have to.
He already killed Heinrich.
Wait, what? What happened?
Well, he came onto my property, it was him or me.
Yeah?
I swear he gave me the hoof,
Yeah?
and so I had to kill him.
It just happened.
And then stuff him in my freezer.
When did that happen?
Fall season.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah,
You
first
already-
afternoon.
Nice.
The morning was nice because it was warm and sunshiny,
Sure.
gentle rocking, nothing was moving in the woods. So I had a nice nap in the stand.
Yeah.
It's good I have one of those stands with the big metal
You need it.
padded
man. Far
fronts.
over.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah, because But yeah, so yeah, Heinrich, God bless him.
God bless
Tastes
him.
great.
I bet.
Yeah.
I bet.
You seen his brother around?
Klaus?
They were twins.
Is this the thing? All right.
Yeah, and I can't talk about Klaus.
Okay.
Oh, okay. It's fair.
I'll just say my wife took him.
Got it.
Yeah.
There you go.
My wife took him.
I took that. Well, at least they're together now.
They are,
There you go.
they're happier that way.
That's right.
In fact, I'll show you the picture, because he's smiling, am I right?
Oh, Jesus.
No, he's seriously, he's happy, he fulfilled his life's mission.
Uh-huh. That's the life.
That's some rationale.
It's like, finally, yes. Tell me that's not a smile on his face.
That is a smile on his face, for sure. Good old Heinrich.
Yeah. He said, let me give you my tenderloin so you may enjoy me.
I didn't get pegs this year, but I was down to our property in Mattawa the weekend before the opening. By myself, big bonfire going, little music playing. They got a little field behind the shed in the building. There's 3 deer walked out there just after dark. Just watching me. I don't know if they were listening to the music or what.
With their heads bobbing.
Yeah.
Well, dang it, maybe I should get paid.
I feel like that's how it works half the time. You try and go out and be all stealthy and whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, in the middle of the summer, you're sitting there with the grill going, the music blaring, coolers open, deer everywhere, and you're just like...
I was across the road and down a little bit, just up from the Feather's Nest.
Mhm.
I pulled into a drive, I'm talking to my daughter, standing there, in the middle of the city. Walks a doe and her fawn. They just walk right through, not paying any mind whatsoever.
That gotta be next year.
Could have gone up. I felt like going up and putting her in a chokehold, but no, I worked my aggression out. I would have scratched her behind the ear.
Yeah, there you go. That's right. That's
It's been
funny.
a nice one on my way to work, right on the reservation. Big buck just standing in the middle of the road, low down, and it just kind of looked at me, and I was like, are you gonna move, or what are we gonna do?
What are we doing
And
here
it just
today?
kind of walked off to the shoulder, and just turned and looked at me, big 8-point buck, gee.
That's funny.
I think that was
Someone told me that they heard the deer population was really low this year.
I believe it. We had 12 guys in the woods. Not here. It's in Itasca County.
It's
Cass
like
County.
from the drought and stuff from the summer?
Maybe. Wolves? I don't
Oh,
know.
yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, we didn't see anything. Nothing.
Really?
Nobody got anything. Shaky.
Good.
Nothing.
Even since season, I get, well, there's 2 single ladies with their fawns that have been coming up onto the mound system and eating that nice nutrient-rich grass that's on top of the mound here. Yeah. But yeah, there's been no shortage of deer, even, after there's blood and guts in the woods.
Yeah.
Let the coyotes clean it up and then they start coming around again.
Weird. But I was reading something like that, April.
Yeah, someone had mentioned something like that, yeah.
Mhm.
I haven't seen a moose in probably 3 years now.
I'm convinced there aren't any moose up here.
Oh my gosh.
It's a facade. It's a facade. I've been here over a year and I haven't seen a moose.
When I first got here, they're just, you couldn't help but see them. They were everywhere. Oh, yeah. I've got a picture in my office. One of the first times driving around, I was up on the Ball Club Road, just coming around for the 2-hour campground, coming around the curve, and there's this bull on its knees licking the road. And that's one of my first breaks downstairs. We're talking, and they said, yeah, you want to see a moose? Just wait until it snows. Right after the snow, the next couple days going out, because they salt the roads, and then go out and lick the road.
Licking the road.
And sure enough, this thing was on its knees, licking the road. And
What
I said,
the-
okay, I'm not sure I want to honk and disturb its chi or anything like
Right?
that. So
Yeah.
I just shut the car off, and I got some pictures. I got the picture right up on my,
Oh, that's
in my office.
funny. Licking
I
the road.
thought-
I like that.
I thought when I came around, he just naturally respected my superiority.
He was like,
He was kneeling before me.
Yeah.
Welcome to Cook County.
Hello.
I am but your humble.
Your moose servant, your moose guy.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So did you two purposely coordinate your outfits today?
Look at that.
Maybe.
This is teal. Teal is in, huh?
Yeah, apparently.
I looked in the closet and I told the wife, I said, this is
Oh
the
my
last
God.
nice day, I gotta wear a short sleeve shirt.
Yeah,
So-
do it.
You gotta stay over on that side of the room? No. I'll stay over here.
Yeah.
It'll balance it out.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Little do you know, yeah, but we do that. We call it, hey, what are you wearing?
Do you know?
I don't want to clash.
I knew that employee phone list that I send out to everyone comes in handy for some people.
That's right.
That's right.
But actually, it's going to be afterwards. Can you believe what he wore?
That goddamn list of, every time I look at them, the list of committees and boards and stuff that you sent out yesterday. Nothing is,
How many are there?
that's ridiculous. I don't know how many there is.
It's really hard to keep that up and going.
I have not cracked that open yet. I'm
I
afraid
just
of that.
scanned it yesterday. And I was like, awesome. This is ridiculous almost.
Yep, no shortage of boards, committees, task forces.
All that. I mean, are they all like well attended and like what, you know what I mean? Like,
Oh,
is there?
some of them haven't probably been attended in years.
Oh, okay.
It's just to cleaning up the rolls, you know?
I see. That's fair.
And some of them are started, well, like for instance, the passion kit one, you know.
Sure.
and It'll go away eventually.
No.
I would hope.
Forever.
Yeah.
That's funny. I think somebody got out there the other day too.
Yes.
Whatever you were talking
Yes,
about.
they did. I was
Yeah.
gonna, yep, because, who was it, Margaret mentioned that, Margaret Eckstrom. She mentioned that some of them been out there. It looks
Good.
great, so, thank you.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it's not hard. Just gotta know about it.
Yeah. So, I'm probably sure we're not gonna have John attending
No?
today. I don't know, I just get that sense.
Yeah, probably not. I
I
guess
think he was a
we'll.
little tentative when
Really?
we were at the, yeah, I think he thinks the chances probably better this time.
That's fair. Yeah.
but- Well, you don't ask, you don't know.
That's very, very true. You gotta ask, and you never know unless you do. So I'll give him that much. But, yeah, just with, I mean, just tell Mike, we got 2 openings now. For
Yeah.
truck drivers. One of them's down here, one of them's in Hoagland, but, yeah, the idea of taking more on is just.
I had a CDL until I took this job.
Oh,
And I this job from Grand Portage.
yeah.
I had this job in Grand Portage before.
I mean, it's a nice place to work, Mike. Get your own truck.
I don't think I hadn't thought about it.
Well, I've heard CDL, getting a CDL license right now is really hard. Like everyone's so short-staffed that you can't even go and take like the exam or whatever it is you need to do.
Yeah, you gotta plan it out super far in advance. That's what our 2 newest guys ran into, was just, you know, because we did the, we'll hire you with a B, but you have to get an A.
Right.
And so, within 6 months or whatever, but basically, once they got hired, they had to already put in paperwork. Yeah, to like get on the list, but then in February, they're changing all of that. Because before, I think you could just like, you didn't have to take a class, you could just go take the test or something like that.
Oh.
But in February, they're changing it, so now you have to take some class, and then you can go take your test for the licenses, yeah. So I have no idea, it's wild though. Yeah, they were teasing me, they're like, you gotta go get your CDL.
Yeah.
Like, I got enough on my plate, man.
Mobile office.
Yeah, mobile office, that's right. Don't need to plow at 3 in the morning and come in and try and, that would not go well.
Oh, you're not gonna outfit the plow trucks, was it the Ford F-150s that have the tailgate that go down, you have the workstation and stuff?
Yeah, that would be perfect.
There you go, mobile office.
Mobile office. I'll get my own little, I'll have Rowan hook it up, a little armor thing in the bed of the truck, so I can get reception wherever I am. It'd be perfect. That'd be fun.
lawsuit's been going on quite a ways, isn't it?
Yeah, when I seen that on the thing, I was like, it seemed like a long time, I don't know. It was right after she retired, wasn't it?
Yeah, I saw her just up at the grocery store the other day. I thought it'd been over with already.
No,
Yeah.
the whole time I've been here, so almost.
Oh, wow.
It's incredible.
I feel like we need to make a friendly wager.
Ooh.
How long it's gonna last, or?
No, on if it's going to snow
Ooh.
in town
In town?
this weekend. If you're already getting snow up the hills, that's not fair.
Yeah.
And you've already gotten snow in Portage, so that's not in town. Is it gonna snow in town?
So when we had those big flakes earlier, it was like last week, I think. Like I had flakes at my place, so
Mhm.
Pike Lake. There wasn't anything here, it was just rain or whatever, sleet. Nothing. Hmm. Did ya?
Well, at least a mile and a half out of
There was a little bit.
Conditional.
So this weekend specifically?
Well, we're supposed to get that storm in, was it Thursday this week, and it's supposed to snow Friday?
Of course, day off. Yeah.
So we need to come up with like a section area of
It's
town.
Thursday.
if
It's
it
Veterans
snows
Day.
there.
When I looked
We
at
get
it
that
this
off?
morning, it ain't gonna hardly
Yes.
do nothing.
No.
Well, maybe only
Around
Veterans
the
Day.
lake.
Oh.
No, we get that. That's the holiday, isn't that, April?
We get Thursday off?
See?
Yeah. You can
Although-
come in if you want to.
It's
I have
only
meetings.
Veterans.
Well, I did that to myself.
It is only Veterans. I just looked it up.
It is only better.
Yeah.
I do have meetings. I'm gonna have to schedule that.
It's funny, you're not the only one. I feel like I need to send out like a countywide reminder email. Hey, we're off on Thursday, everyone.
Yeah.
You know what
It's a holiday.
when I was at MnDOT, what they did every year was send out, just like, it was like a meeting, but it would say Veterans Day and off or whatever, and so then that just gets blasted out to everything, so you could just put it on your calendar then. And that worked really well.
Seen Rachel Espy yesterday, and she thought I was teasing. I said, well, we're off on Thursday. Yeah, well, sure we are. No, really, we are.
Yeah, well, we confuse it with the Columbus Day or whatever you want to
Yeah.
call that day, because we take that after Thanksgiving, the Friday after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Did you forget about that too, Robbie?
Thursday?
The
Or the
Friday
day
after
after?
Thanksgiving.
No, Lisa reminded me of that.
Okay.
Yeah, that one I at least know. I got that one.
Well, next year, Veterans Day will be nice, because it is on a Friday next year.
Yeah, it's kind
It's
of
a little
cool.
awkward on a Thursday.
Yeah. So we're off
I say yes, it'll snow, and just a light crusty thing will stay for a little while, but I've got faith that it's gonna burn off.
I don't think the ground's cold enough yet. We just
Right.
haven't been hitting those
And the
freezing
lake
temperatures.
is still pretty
And
warm.
it might rain before it snows,
Uh-huh.
so the ground will really be wet.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll stick.
I think that's fair. Is it every November 11th?
Yes. Well, unless it falls on a Saturday, then it's the Friday. Or if it falls on a Sunday, then it's a Monday.
Yeah.
Do I need to send you the holiday schedule again?
With
I'm putting this
a
one
month
in
left to
now,
go
please.
in the year.
What's that?
Only 1 month left to go in the year, you need to be reminded of the holiday. Hey, we get Christmas off too.
Oh, good. I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure.
For the New Year's, 2 Fridays in a row, I think. Ain't that on a Friday?
I think so.
Yeah, it's gonna be weird. I think this will probably be, I mean, we still have 2 weeks until Thanksgiving, but I think this will probably be the first year since I've been here that I'm not gonna have a white Thanksgiving.
Yeah. That used to be a thing.
Well, it used to open the ski that weekend.
Did they?
They're not making snow yet.
bet they will be pretty darn quick.
Well, I think they'll probably start this weekend. 20s and 30s, that's cool enough to start. Well, they just denied your thing. You didn't get word on that?
No, I didn't.
They had to go in a separate room to do it.
Are they in their,
They're still in the closed session.
okay.
Yeah.
So I made it.
You did? And I'll promise to go really, really slow on all of my other elements before yours. God knows
That'll
how
help
long
me settle
Robbie's
into
gonna
the mood of things,
What's that?
That'll help me settle into the ambience.
Oh, there you go.
Well, you know, Tim, as soon as Robbie's done, they're gonna be so tired from the closed session, they're gonna go to a break.
That's right.
Yeah, let's pick it up next week.
I love how that's just like a running thing.
So you're April.
Yeah.
I've gotten emails. Nice to meet you in
Hello.
person. Here's what I look like without a mask. Nice to meet you. So there at item 4.
Yep.
Okay. Looks like you're gonna be on half the rest of the morning, Tim.
He hogs the mic.
Who's gonna take Bill's job? Who has?
Yeah, her name is Neela Maxwell. She's actually had filled that position in Lake County. So
Okay.
we're getting somebody who at least knows the area, knows the geographic conditions of the North Shore. Her husband actually works at Sawtooth Outfitters, or Sawtooth
Nice.
Outfitters?
Sawville or Sawtooth?
Well, the one right across from you guys.
Sawtooth.
Yeah.
And does she live in the town?
Well, now they lived in Silver Bay. They did get their place sold, and they actually did buy a place here. You know, Diane Stoddard, she just moved to Iowa, and she put her house up, and it was just like a perfect timing.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so they're
That's a rare find.
closing on both of them within the next couple of weeks, and
And she started here?
starting on December 1st.
Super.
She's on maternity leave. She just had her first kid
Oh.
a month or so ago.
It's a lot of life changes all at the same time.
Exactly.
A new
Yeah.
job,
Yeah.
moving, selling a house,
Oh,
yeah.
boy, yeah.
Yeah, aren't there like, what, 5 things that cause you the most stress and correlated with like health issues? Like moving, family change, job change. Hopefully she's young and vibrant and can negotiate them all.
Yeah, she's definitely a sharp gal.
Will Bill come in and do a little training, or is that all fall back to you then?
Yeah, that's me. He's unplugged enough. He's gotten into the banding and the owl again, and
Oh, yeah.
working on the trail, the single tracks and stuff like that. Well, we'll have to alert you, Dennis, not to say anything snarky right now, because this still is being live fed through the YouTube channel.
Okay.
And if you do say something snarky, we'll be sure to mention your name.
I'll attribute it to you. But thanks for warning me. My wife tells me I have an issue with that.
No way.
Not enough filters sometimes. So I put the mask up, that filter something.
I thought everybody in Cook County is very well filtered.
I've gotten good at holding back.
There's things you say to yourself that should always come out right away.
I was in one of the listening sessions yesterday.
Oh, how's that?
All right.
Oh, is that one of those things I holding back?
I thought I was just gonna be, I can't say what happened.
Right.
I was just gonna make a smart aleck comment, and I thought, you know, maybe this isn't the right situation.
Not the right
for that-
forum.
for that. I'll just say, somebody said they were there to listen and did most of the time.
Ah, well, there you go, yeah.
Active listening,
Yeah, yeah.
hyperactive listening.
Yeah, you can listen and talk at the same time.
Don't they say you really can't?
I can.
It's, yeah, it's that whole multitask thing, there's no such thing. You are doing different things, it's just the speed at which you do them, or effectiveness.
Robbie, you guys use portable radios? Some?
We
You probably
have some. I have one in my office. No. I'm trying to remember though. I think they use them more. Well, they're all in the trucks. There's a few floating around. Yeah. But I think they're all different models, or there's something weird with it where they're like, ah,
They're the older style radio. You can barely get parts or even batteries for them.
yeah, that rings a bell. I think we have it worked in with our equipment plan, whatever the replacement schedule is on them. I think Rowan had given us a time frame, and we are already beyond that with whatever we currently have.
Right.
So we're like, oh, good, okay, fit, $100,000 or whatever the heck it is worth of radios. Yeah.
Yeah, the sooner you can get the new ones, the better.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I did find Rowan couldn't even get Motorola brand radios.
Really?
But
They just don't make them anymore, or what?
But, yeah, they just,
Really?
I thought they were like the.
Motorola is real good about when they come out with a new product, they make sure the old one, you can't get.
No support.
You know.
Huh.
Sounds like Apple.
But I did, so Rowan got some off-brand radios, just so we had some for our cat,
Mm-hmm.
and I found batteries on, where do we find them? Amazon.
Amazon, of course.
Or eBay.
Yeah.
And they were Motorola brand batteries.
It's like the old school pager when I was first responder here. I had an old pager and a spare battery for that, but they changed over. I said, we don't even need those. You keep it, but it's worthless because nothing ever pages.
Right, yeah.
So-
Was that,
What?
were you able to read Nanette's reply? to-
Yeah, I talked to her.
Okay, good.
Yep, that's all set up and ready to go.
Okay, I just started to look at it and I was like, ooh, I'm gonna make sure this is.
Yeah, there was one I had to email her back and I'm like, what is this email address again?
Yeah, that's fair.
I
Got a little
everything else.
squished, yeah, I'm guessing that one, yeah, okay, good.
Yep.
Just checking.
Well, as soon as I leave, I'll come back.
That's
Yeah,
right.
right.
Mike's here for anyway. Is that for your item?
Who's that?
That Mike's here?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, well, I think there's a Firewise item that was pulled from consent and put onto
Oh,
Brady's, yeah.
Right. Yeah, what do you do if like say if you just have something on consent and it
Mhm.
gets pulled and you're not here? And it just gets tabled?
Rush down here? No.
That's fair. No, that's fair. I always wondered that. I'm like, I always show up even if we just have things on consent.
Just
Just
because.
I have no
Just
idea.
in case, yeah.
Mm,
Depends on how important it is to you.
everything's important.
There you go, good.
No, I guess my answer would be if you have something on consent and you won't be able to be here in person, in the off chance it does get pulled,
Mm-hmm.
I would probably just talk to James
Mm-hmm.
and debrief him on that consent agenda item, so he's as well informed as he could be in case it does get pulled and they do have questions.
Sure. And I guess I meant it more as like I still would be right there,
Mhm.
just if it did get pulled, like, oh shoot, we need 5 minutes to run down.
Yeah.
No, if I was gone and something, like gone, somebody else would
Yeah.
come in. Make Josh do it or something.
They should actually do those closed meeting parts at the end of the regular meetings. Just an observation.
Just like,
Especially when the TV system is on, and
Yeah.
people may be watching and nothing going on.
mm-hmm.
I think this one, the outside counsel specifically requested it earlier.
Oh, okay. Probably I'll give you $1 if you go up to the chair seat.
Yeah, hot spot.
Tap in the mic, check, and do some beatbox.
I was just gonna say I would like to practice my open mic. Big tournament this weekend. Sure that would go over well.
And you'd be $1 richer.
I would be $1 richer.
How's that?
I'd give them $1 to do that.
Oh, I see.
See?
But in the overall accounting of the outcome of the activity, you might not be richer in the end.
No, most likely not.
Maybe find it out.
Oh.
You
Well,
guys.
Robbie, did you hear that joke about the construction?
Oh boy.
I'm still working on it. Sorry.
I like that. No, I'm a sucker for that. That's a good one. That's really funny. this rolling over hours into deferred comp? You get that? Do you do that at all?
No.
Paid leave?
Yeah,
What are you talking about?
I kind of know, but I don't do that.
Oh, okay.
I'm careful to maintain mine in a window.
Sure. Do you happen to know, like, do we have a amount that we can roll over in our paid leave every year? Like a use it or lose it type of thing?
Well, it's 520 is all you can carry over. And if you
520?
520 hours.
Holy crap, okay.
Yeah. And if you
So much.
if you don't coordinate or gift, you can gift it to a bank.
Yeah.
And you can roll it into, is it
Deferred
comp?
Yeah.
And if you don't do that, you can lose it.
520 though.
Yeah.
Who has that many PTO? That's what I want to know. You?
I do, I have to have it up that way because when my wife had her cancer stuff and, you know, with me and I'm gonna expire pretty soon.
Yeah, gotta save it up.
You just gotta have it, you know, because you never know.
You never know. That's fair. Okay. I was wondering if this was implying, because it says you can roll 40, you have to keep at least 120.
Yes.
But I didn't know if that 120 was specific to this or specific to, in general, what we can roll over every year.
Well, you can, like I said, you can roll over 520.
Okay, never mind. I'm not even going to worry about this then.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
But that's, you know, I maintain that in lieu of the short-term disability.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, because you do the short-term disability, and I think, wow, if I just have the hours.
I have that one. No, that makes sense. That's the path I was going to go down to. What's that? Okay. 520. That's a lot. How many days is that?
Oh, what is it, 13 weeks or?
Excuse me, man. We're doing 520 divided by what?
Higher mathematics.
65 days. 13 weeks. There you go.
Whoa,
Look at you.
look at that.
13 business weeks.
Was watching the football game Sunday, and one of the commentators was like, "Oh yeah, you know, you need 7 sets of eyes, and well, I don't know how many eyeballs I was. I'm not good at math." And I'm just like, "Really? Really?
Come on.
That's like 742, right?
Yeah. That's really funny.
And I'm like, "Wow, and you're an NFL commentator."
Yeah, right. He's paid a lot of money.
It's like a quarterback for Green Bay Packers.
Yeah.
You pay a lot of money
Yeah.
to sit a game out.
That's their problem.
So the county, it's only 4 weeks of maternity leave, so.
No, I think the FMLA is 11 weeks, and then that's the Family Medical Leave Act thing, and then of that, you can use your time, your paid, accumulated paid time, or it becomes then unpaid leave if you don't have any of that.
Right.
So I think that's the protected amount of time that you're given. And I know in this particular case with those replacements is that she did have that time, but then she is also giving notice to Lake County, which, you know, that's, I don't know how they would have handled that.
My wife's from Lithuania, and her cousins just had young children. They get 100% salary for the first year and 80% salary for the second year.
Jeez.
Wow.
Which is, I think, a bit generous, but Europe's much more lenient about parental leave. And the U.S. is, among industrialized countries, uniquely stingy about that.
Canada's a year, I believe.
Is it?
Canada?
Wow.
Yeah. That's because the guys have been making the rules in this country for a long, long time.
week of August, or whole month of August off and go to the beach. And
Which is
On
not
a
great.
holiday, that's
It's
right.
not great for the tourism industry.
yeah.
Just gets hammered for a month, and then, but it's a pretty short season.
Yep.
So Bill's back manding owls again, huh?
Yep.
My first contact with Bill, I don't know, 30 years ago, he was working out east somewhere and wanting to move this way, and called me to see if we had an interest in sponsoring owl education programs with him.
Oh,
So, yeah, well, I wrote that in.
wow, I didn't know that.
He has a son out east, doesn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, so he lived out there somewhere.
Yep.
Before he came here.
Yeah, he comes out every so often.
The Owl Man, he called himself now.
So, I'll just show you the cake that I had made for his going away cake. I photoshopped that owl in there.
That's not, but was there actually a cake made? that looked like
Yeah,
that?
yeah, I took that,
Who made the cake?
at Gene's, you send them the picture and they get that printed right onto the cake.
Perched right on his phone.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of icing in that cake.
Oh, yeah.
Make that
You saw
all
that.
color of cake. How long was Bill in that department?
What, since 2006 timeframe?
So 15.
Did you see
15
that?
years, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I thought they did that. Huh? He filled in, well, it came in, was it before or after Kettleson? I think it was before Kettleson. And then, yeah, he took Ann's spot after Ann left, and then we got Kettleson.
Yeah. April, how long have you been with the company?
Just about 3 years.
Okay. Are you new to Cook County or new to the chapter?
New to Cook County. My husband grew up here.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, and then went into the military, retired after a little over 20 years, and then moved back.
So does it feel like home to you?
Starting to.
Where'd you grow up?
Down south,
South Minnesota or South?
North Carolina.
North
North
Carolina.
South.
Carolina, south.
There we go.
Mhm. A little bit different.
Bless your
climate.
heart.
See, so if I start talking to you guys and I start getting some y'all out there,
Yeah.
this is part of that comes out.
Hmm. So you lived down there until 3 years ago?
Oh, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Where'd you live in North Carolina?
Fayetteville?
We're gonna rent an RV for a few weeks in January, kind of drive around down in that neck of the woods.
Okay.
Probably maybe a little more south generally the same one, but I've always been curious about that. Kind of the southeast part of the country.
Mm-hmm. The coast is beautiful.
Yeah.
Got stranded over there.
Don't miss the hurricanes.
No, at the first,
Don't miss that.
the first Gulf War timeframe, we were slated to go on leave and go down to Greece and spend some time down there, and then the buildup started happening, Saddam invaded and all that, and so during that buildup, they stopped all the flights going south, but we could go back to the U.S. We were living in Germany at the time, and so they said, yeah, but you can go back, because they're been sending all the supply planes back and forth from the States to Europe. And so within 45 minutes, we're on a plane heading back, but we landed at Fayetteville area at 2:30 in the morning when the post was actually shut down and under lockdown. And they said, "What? You guys aren't supposed to be here." So they threw us in the back of a truck, brought us to the gate, and dropped us off.
Nice.
And that was that.
Well, it's the biggest base in the East Coast, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Quite large.
Yep. Well, it was interesting because it actually found a taxi ride to a hotel and then decided to go to the Greyhound station to go get a rental car or whatever. But we started pulling out of the Greyhound station only to find that was when the bus strike was going on. Didn't know anything about it, but then as we're pulling out of the terminal, and the drivers are pounding on the sides of the bus, and it was like, that's interesting. So yeah. We didn't go back there. We went then to fly back over after spending 3 weeks here. We flew into, or drove to Charleston to fly out of there. Yeah.
When did you get out in service, Tim?
When did I get out? 90, Act 3, actually.
So was that a retirement, basically?
It was not. I only spent 8 years in.
Oh,
Yeah. And been in the cutting edge world of county government ever since.
I know you can retire quite early if you get started.
Yeah, I had thought about that, but my next station, I had just missed. I mean, I was in during the first Gulf War. I was in during Somalia. I was like 2 weeks from going to Somalia. If you saw that movie Black Hawk Down, 10th Mountain, I was in the 10th Mountain Division. That was my unit. Then they said, well, we'll send you back when it's your time to get out. They don't send people back by themselves from the Horn of Africa, so whatever. But so I was in during a lot of these things, Grenada, Panama, and I never did go down. I was a unit trainer, so I trained a lot of folks that went down to those places, but that, man, my luck is probably running out for going these things. And my next unit was going to be going over to Korea for an unaccompanied tour of the year. So it's like, yeah, just going to bag it. I always had intended to get out and fly commercially, because my brother's father-in-law was a senior trainer down at Northwest Airlines. I belonged to Future Airline Pilots Association. So when I got out with deregulation, there was a glut of pilots there.
Yeah, and it wasn't the same kind of job anymore.
No, a little difference being at treetop level, going 130 miles an hour as opposed to being up at no.
Well, once it got, once all the union battles started happening and the consolidation started happening, it just went from being a really good, well-paid, sought-after job to being kind of a commodity there for a while. I don't know what the status is now, but a friend of mine was a mechanic for Northwest. And he went through the Republic on the acquisition by Northwest.
Okay.
And then all kinds of just vicious strikes,
Yeah.
Periods of time. And then ultimately developed a Bally Northwest. And trying to do one career for a working lifetime. But it was just chaos in that industry at that time.
Yeah.
He ultimately had the opportunity to move to Atlanta, or leave. So he left. And now he finished his career working for, and they just started outsourcing so much. It was cheap when you work for a contractor to outsource, and they were developing maintenance manuals for in Taiwanese or Chinese language, because so much of that maintenance was being outsourced. But yeah, it was a hard industry to enjoy a career in during maybe 70s.
Yeah. If I wanted to stay in aviation, I was going to move to the desert Southwest area where a lot of the, and stay then with rotorcraft. I was a helicopter pilot, so kind of favor that envelope a little better, but either go corporate or life flight or something like decided to turn the page. Although I'd like to retire and build an airplane now.
Have you seen this new, the new generation of kind of crossing between helicopters, airplanes, and drones?
Yes.
Where it's kind of the drone propellers, and then they just turn forward.
Yeah, like
They got
8
good-
or 12 or.
Good flight speeds.
Yeah, no, I keep up on that. I go to Oshkosh every year. And,
Oh, you do, huh?
Yeah. I still have a commercial license. So-
You still do?
Yeah.
You have to fly a lot to keep that up.
Well, there's a difference between maintaining the license and then being current. I'm not current.
Okay.
In order to maintain your currency, you have to have the current flight physical, 3 takeoffs and 3 landings, and I don't have that. So, yep, instead of, I'm using my aerospace degree here in county government.
How's Kim doing?
Doing really well.
Fully recovered?
Yes, you're still being knocked down by the autoimmune stuff, but the cancer's not come back at all. So we're past 7 years now, which is pretty remarkable. They had given her that, what was it, 38% survival rate for the first 5 years. So beat the odds.
Yeah, I knew it was serious. Well, say hi to her, tell her. Very happy that she got out the end of it so successfully.
Yeah.
It was not long after she left Newfoundland that she got sick with it.
No, in fact, we kicked around how we should sue Bluefin for giving her cancer.
How did it start again? I don't remember now.
How did it
In her
start?
body, where did it-
Yeah, no, actually, there were no symptoms for the cancer. It was all symptoms for the autoimmune condition. And it wasn't until one day she was at Caribou Islands and she was on her way home from work and just blacked out in the car on the way. Went into the ditch over by Isaac Hansen's. And at that point, then the doctor said, well, let's get you down to Mayo to get checked out. And it took a lot of analysis with Mayo to team effort to find that, because they weren't going in that direction. But one of the internal medicine guy had noted and read some research that there was 30%, 33%, a good 1/3 of people with that type of autoimmune disorder has an underlying type of cancer associated with it. So then they started testing towards that and found it right away.
So she need to take some immune testing medications full time?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit analogous to like rheumatoid arthritis or other things where your body
Exactly.
attacking itself, basically.
Yep. Yeah, and that's progressive too. So every so often has to give it up the meds and keep it effective. That's doing well.
Does that make her susceptible to any disease that comes around, bacteria or virus or anything?
You know, it's funny because otherwise it's been pretty healthy. The thing that's really been the worst on her was the shot. She, we had the Johnson shot, and then 6 weeks after that, she had this just huge, the worst flare of symptoms of back before when she was originally diagnosed. And we ended up going into the ER. We were on a road trip out west and went into the ER in Billings, Montana. Got
There you go.
down to
Thanks.
Mayo, and they ran her through all these tests and said, "No reaction to the 6 weeks."
Does she have a booster?
No.
So that's really bad decision.
She didn't do no, for what that put her through. They said, nope, you're fine.
Would that be the same with the RS&amp vaccines?
Yeah, it is, the Johnson is different.
Yeah.
And that's why we opted for that, because it's not that. But if that one did that much to her, and that was huge. They said no.
Just keep a mask on, stay out of.
Yeah.
Inaccurate.
Yep, for sure.
Okay, meeting adjourned.
Come again?
I said meeting adjourned.
Oh, we're just getting
The
started.
rest of the business for you guys.
I missed that.
We went through the rest of the business.
Oh, thank you. That was very kind.
April
They
let you know.
declined our conditional use permit.
Oh,
So we're hoping you'll take that back up.
yeah. Is there an appeal process or what's the?
No.
Uh-oh, now what?
Now I'm.
Now you need an outlet, huh? Well, I'm charged, so.
Usually
Does
mine
this, oh, you've got a different,
Oh, yeah. You sure?
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I could've. I was already down there.
Here we go. Okay, no
I suppose
worries.
I left my,
I'm sorry?
I said, oh, that's right, I left my computer on, it's dead now. All my notes again are.
Is it dead or is it just sleep? Oh, it's
Sleeping.
I'm gonna grab some more coffee.
Totally.
Okay.
Keeping busy now?
Yeah, very busy.
Bad. Oh.
Maybe if it starts working, then they can. Yeah, she's having a really good time and
Okay, I will call the meeting of Cook County Board of Commissioners back into the open session. And where we are in the agenda is item 5, the Highway Department. 5A is transferring ownership of County Road 89 to Grand Portage Band at Lake Superior, Chippewa. Good morning, Engineer Haas.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, so kind of, the whole description's basically in the title right there. It's kind of a unique opportunity for us to be a part of something like this. So not only, you can read the summary, not only does it obviously save us money annually, but it also, goes towards our commitment in recognizing tribal land as sovereign. I worked with, Chairman Deschamps up there and, some other folks at the BIA, and we just thought this was a really good candidate to go through with this. So I guess if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Saulson.
Now, this is just the section that is between Mineral Center and the old border crossing?
Correct, yes. So that is County Road 89, yeah, 17.
That's what was my recollection, I just wanted to validate that.
You got it. Yep.
Yeah, and, this is a really, really wonderful opportunity, just as we're doing lots of discussions about racial equity and just different You know, we're talking about land acknowledgement, we're talking about education, and we're talking about policy, and you know, a lot of the conversations we've had is kind of like, well, talk is cheap, what are you going to do? This is, you know, maybe not directly because of those discussions, but I think having those discussions brings more awareness, and I really appreciate you, Engineer Haas, bringing this to our attention, because it is such a wonderful opportunity to take action, and I applaud it. So,
Thank you.
any other questions or comments, Commissioner Sullivan?
I just wanted to remark that today is a day, as Cook County, we should be proud of the action that we're taking. I sit on the Racial Equity Work Group. We've developed a land acknowledgement statement, kind of a prototype that we'll be bringing here to the county board in a couple of months. I wish I could be reading it and we would have adopted it by now. But we've educated ourselves and we're trying to do the right thing. And so I just want to thank you on behalf of our community for doing the right thing.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Else, I'd entertain a motion here.
Chair,
Commissioner Swanson.
I would motion to transfer the ownership of County Road 89, Old Highway 61 to Grand Portage Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa.
Thank you, Commissioner Swanson. We have a motion. Is there support?
Sullivan supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign, and motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Engineer House.
Thank you.
That moves us on to item 6, Land Services. 6A is the appointment of Planning Commission / Board of Adjustment. Mr. Nelson, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, everyone. Few items on the agenda for you today. The first one of which is to go ahead and appoint or make an appointment of Keith Kuckler to both the Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment. Mr. Kuckler has actually in the past been a member of both the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment. So he is normally what we do is appoint someone to serve on the Planning Commission, have them get used to the position, and then since there are only 5 members of the 7-member Planning Commission that are Board of Adjustment members, then we appoint one over. But with the 2 vacancies that we have with already in the Planning Commission, we don't have anyone else in the Planning Commission to appoint for that Board of Adjustment. So we'd just like to make that appointment effective immediately. The next meeting is actually going to be on the December 15th. So he will be prepared to go ahead and serve on that meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Any questions, comments from commissioners? Commissioner Hawkins.
Yes, can you tell me who has resigned? And both, you said there were 2 openings, 2 people resigned.
Yes, we did. We have Don Fuhrer and Charles Anderson. And we do know that there's going to be another vacancy up the trail. John Schlote is going to be vacating after December. So it's the first year we're going to have another opening. So with this appointment, we'll still have 2 openings on the Planning Commission, and then that'll be it, because both of those positions were only Planning Commission members and not Board of Adjustment. So after today, we'll have a full Board of Adjustment and then need 2 members for the Planning Commission.
And did you do exit interviews with these people that are leaving?
Yeah, they're both leaving just because of other obligations and other commitments they would like to stay on, but they just have felt their time has been pulled in several different directions that they would go. Don has been chair of the Planning Commission for a long time, and he's a very good and effective chair, but he is doing volunteer work with
The Red Cross.
Yes, the Red Cross, that's right. And so he just hasn't had time to be able to do that. And normally what we try to do is distribute the membership geographically so that we have good representation from the different geographic areas. Both of those positions, Don Fuhrer and Charles Anderson, are from more of the west end.
Keith Kuckler is more centralized, so in the search and trying to find replacements, we still are going to be looking more towards the west side, and then again up the trail for John Schlote.
And so is this appointment to fill out a remaining term, or is this a
That's-
new
yes,
term?
yes.
Okay, and how many years are left on this term?
Oh,
Do you
I'd have
remember? I'm just,
Yeah,
like, is it 1 year and then you're going to have to reappoint?
they
or
are
is it-
3-year terms.
Okay, just, all right.
And so I will be back in January for
Okay,
the regular
that's
reappointment.
what I was
but-
like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
when does this
So
come
this
back
is
to
just
us
a
again?
filling a tour. yeah.
All right. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. Any other questions, comments? Very grateful that Mr. Kuckler stepped up again, and well, I guess we'll just have to keep putting the word out for another 2 members. That's what's coming our way. So, all right, I'll entertain a motion at this point.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Sullivan.
I'd like to move to approve the appointment of Keith Kuckler to both the Planning Commission and the Board of Adjustment to fill out the vacancy created by the departure of the current chair, Don Fair.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We have a motion. Is there support?
Sterling support.
Thank you, Commissioner Starley. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, same side. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Moving on to 6B, the Natural Resources Block Grant Agreement Renewal.
Okay, thank you again, Mr. Chair. This is just a renewal. This is an administrative function. We don't see any major changes in the grant agreement. What they do is the state basically puts the grants together into a block grant that contain the wetlands, the shoreland management, septic systems, and it's just a revolving one that we get basically administratively, but we do need to update the agreement to reflect as such, and so this is just that time frame. As I indicated, there aren't any changes that would impact the budgets in terms of the amount of amounts coming in or funds coming in through each of the grants. They are between the Land Services Department and the SWCD as well, get some of that.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Any questions from commissioners on this item? Commissioner Hawkins.
So the land services portion of these grants, are they reflected in your 2022 budget?
Yes.
And which ones of those, because there's 6, so some of them were, you said soil and water. I see that they gave money to the septic system, which we thought we weren't going to get, so we did get money for septic. Does that money stay in your department, or
Yes.
is that, okay.
Yes, pretty much soil and water gets a water planning money for the water plan stuff. We get the septic, we get the wetlands, the Water Conservation Act funds, and we get the shoreland management funds.
So if you add up the list of what was done in 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023, 2022 is a huge increase. I mean, $94,000 over last year of 2021 of $30,000. So that's what I'm saying, are we going to reduce, which budget are we reducing because we're getting more money?
Well, we tend to, when we get these grant type funds in, we look, more critically in terms of what we don't get, because it's historically what we do find are reductions in those grants. So we find ourselves getting almost caught up to what it is that we had received in the past, but no longer received in there. So I hadn't adjusted any of our particular budget to reflect that, but it would be for the land services side of it. So if you want to see some adjustment in the budget that would remove funds, one of the things that is and has been an absolute fact for these is that the land services budget, whether it's shoreland management, septic systems, or anything, never pays for itself. So any funds that we do get from the grants only offsets the cost or the expenses that we have. So if we were to reduce any of the amounts of that we have for the budget or the expense on the general revenue, that can be reflected through that.
Well, I'm just worried about the bottom levy number being accurate for each department. And if departments aren't acknowledging or putting into their numbers the funds that are coming from other places, that places higher amounts on our levy, which I don't think is fair to taxpayers when we get to just add it to our general reserves.
Well, if I might, you know, when we do the budget process, it's kind of like what we know at that time and our best knowledge going forward. And so when we get this sort of thing, my understanding is there would be adjustments. It's not always just shoveled away. But I certainly do appreciate, you know, recognizing the boons when we get them. But I don't think, well, my limited understanding is the land services budget has not been, I guess, building quite the reserve like that was, I guess, implied with you know, just receiving grants. I think it's all adjusted, but I want to make sure it is accurate, the bottom line, just like you said. So, Mr. Nelson.
I just wanted to explain too that any increase that we do get in the grant funds is not as though there's an increase in projects or things that we do. That is what's first covered out of it. So at the end of the year, if it doesn't even get reflected in the actual budget numbers, that's that number that is not pulled out of the general funds. Okay, so we do run our same normal expenses. We get that money in from the state. That's money that we get in from the state that we don't pull out of the general funds. So we work off of what the net is at the end. So that net at the end is going to be reduced, whether we project it at this point or we don't, because the activity is not increased. So there's no increase in expenditures. So that money that is coming in from the grant is already automatically replacing money that's coming out of the general revenue.
Yes, I
See what I'm saying?
understand that. I am just, after looking through the budget closer and at more detail, and you just happen to be sitting here. Yours is not the only department that doesn't always fully account for revenues from other places.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, could you explain what you're saying there? Because we actually do account for funds from other places.
In the budget,
When we
when we put the budget together,
when we're
we guess.
budgeting, we do not include, we may be expecting grants, but until those grants are actually confirmed,
Right.
we can't put them in the budget.
But now we
That would be
know-
a really poor way to do budgeting.
But for now, we know for 2022 in this, that's why I was asking which
Correct.
which line item. We know it's going to be there, and that's where I was asking, which of those pages was going to be changed before we get our final budget levy recommendation from you? I want to just make sure it's showing up.
Well,
It's
and
hardly
that
as though
seems,
there's a fund somewhere that we're squirreling this away. This
That's
does
not what
come-
I was
This
saying.
does come out, it just automatically does come off of any expenditures that are spent.
Well,
It automatically
and-
reduces the general revenue.
yes, thank you, yeah. I do appreciate the question, because what I'm hearing Commissioner Hawkins say is that she just wants to better understand how this grant money works into our budget and just line by line with the budget. And I think that's a very appropriate question to have, and we all want to have better understanding of how this all works together. But I don't know that particular budget discussion is appropriate when we're accepting the grant block.
No, I'm not going to turn it down. I'm certainly voting for it.
Right.
But I have to
But,
do
yeah.
more than one thing as a commissioner,
Oh,
and I
yeah.
also have my budget out here, and I'm looking through the budget and what we were presented, and I'm like, oh, I wonder which line that comes to, because we've got quite a bit more than last year.
Yeah.
Where is that going, is what my question is.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful question. When, I don't know that Mr. Nelson has his budget in front of him right now, and so he could have, if the question was presented ahead of the meeting, which maybe is a more productive way to get our questions answered. And I think it still should be answered. So I would appreciate if we could work through that. But right now, the item is merely accepting the grant dollars, which, ironically or not, I was wondering why it wasn't on the consent agenda.
Well, and that's, Mr. Chair, that's generally where we put it in the past, because whenever, especially when you get more, it's more, and it automatically reduces the general funds that we do have to tap into. So it has, in the past been on that, but because of the virtue of the fact that we do have to accept or renew the agreement and then designate the land services director as the representative is
Okay.
why I did keep it on. And it's
Okay.
very easy. I mean, I can supply the board with a simple write-up in terms of where the funds are exactly going to be going. That
Yeah.
is easy. And I really would appreciate, if there are any questions, to get them ahead of time so that we can intellectually and intelligently discuss these instead of having to guess and wonder right at the meeting.
Well, I do my share of guess and wondering, but I'll do my darndest to get questions ahead of time. But I would appreciate the follow up, and just so we can all learn about where the money goes and how that affects the budget. I think that'd be very helpful. But are there other questions, or is that, yeah, Commissioner?
Well, just
Swanson?
from a comment perspective is all it is. You have to be careful when you're talking grants, because as we've just said, this one we have what we would consider a windfall or an additional amount, and that's fantastic. But there's many times that, of course, we request a sum and we get much less. And if you're going to go into that kind of a discussion on each of those, where is that money now going to come from that you're now not going to get? And we do on the larger ones. We do. If we're talking some of the really large ones that will have an immediate negative effect on our ability to continue on, we do that. But otherwise, on these other ones, you find they kind of ebb and flow as you go through. And the questions are great, and we can always, go to Brady, or we can ask for a conversation to have that. How are these adjusting out? But as far as an immediate effect on the levy, it doesn't have any effect on the levy, because you don't know what your other ones are going to be as you're going through the year, because we can't predict that. All we can do is set the levy amount based on what we know, and then we take them as they come in. Now, you can do it as a whole year by year to see where we ahead or behind, but you still can't predict what they'll be next year. Right? You have an idea, but it just gets to be a little tricky if you're trying
Right.
to do that based on just, you can estimate, but yeah.
And then adjust.
Yeah,
And
that's
then-
all you can
yeah.
really do. It's not as simple as just, throw the switch and say, all right, so now we're going to reduce this by this amount.
Sure. And, a lot of my questions, sorry, Mr. Nelson, a lot of my questions do come up at meetings.
Yep.
As we're talking and working through things, and so we can't always get them ahead of time. I'll do my darndest to get them ahead of time, but sometimes I get things that pop into my head, and if you can't answer them, that's okay with me. I'll wait for those, but it just, I just also want to say, to Commissioner Hawkins' point, like, if a question, like, this is the time to ask questions, right? Like, this is one of the times that we have as commissioners, as a group, to be able to ask questions when we're all together. So I want to recognize that too. Yeah. So thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Swalson, for further perspective there too.
Tim and I could talk after the meeting and see if there's something that could be adjusted for the final levy report to you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Very helpful, thank you. All right, any other comments or questions? None. Then I'd entertain a motion here.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Sullivan.
I'd like to move to approve the updated natural resource block grant for 2022 and 2023.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We have a motion. Is there support?
Strongly support.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. Motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Moving on to item C, U.S. Forest Service request for plowing 1.9 miles of Bally Creek Road.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. This was a request that had come in from the U.S. Forest Service. John Benson had appeared in front of the Parks and Trails Commission and had discussed this as an issue, and we discussed it from a Parks and Trails perspective and strictly as a Parks and Trails perspective, and that's why I had also invited the highway engineer to be involved in the discussion as well, understanding there's logistics behind it. But the USFS had requested that the county would consider plowing from the Bally Creek Road from the intersection of 48. There, you guys have a map that you should have indicated on there, up to the trailhead that is on there. And in part, from the Parks and Trails perspective, they looked at the potential increase in usage of trail systems. And then they also looked at the safety aspect of it, because the individual who's doing the plowing of it doesn't have the equipment well enough to keep the road and the plowed portion of it wide enough from a safety standpoint further on, especially as the season gets late into the year. And so the Parks and Trails Commission did kind of wrestle with it from the perspective of, should we as a county even be doing something like this? There are instances where the county is doing some type of joint management or care of facilities, and the highway engineer can discuss that particular perspective of it. But in the end, the Parks and Trails Commission did recommend, strictly from a Parks and Trails perspective, that the county consider go ahead and plowing the 1.9 miles as depicted on the map, but also giving place to the perspective of logistics and other considerations as well. So I just bring that to you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. This is not this is a new request from the Forest Service. This is not a new request. I'd say that's been brought to the county, but maybe a little more formal this time. And I see it as a really good opportunity to maybe have some more partnerships, whether it be with the state, the Forest Service, or even private partners, potentially visit Cook County. But of course, the first time I was aware of the request, it went straight to the highway department and or rather the advisory committee, I believe, and was turned down due to I think resources there, and so I don't know that there's been further work with the highway department about resources, logistics. Has there been any talk with the Forest Service about any partnership there, or is it just straight up, will you guys do this?
I think it's just been straight up,
Yeah.
will you do this?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you bring up I don't know, I'll let you guys debate before I have notes if you want to hear them, but.
Yeah, please, well,
Please.
sure, I was just
Sure.
going from memory and
No,
talking.
I think it's something that we're going to have to address in the county. This is a wonderful example here. And I definitely appreciate, the acknowledgement from a safety and a Parks and Trails perspective. Absolutely. I'd love to plow the whole county. Seriously, I mean, we're getting to this kind of point, and there's other things that come up in the past too. More people are living on forest roads. It's just, we're kind of in these growing pains. I feel like you start hearing about it more and more. But this it's not just one more thing right now. I think if we were to do this, among other things, we would need to have a much larger discussion about staffing, equipment, funding. Right now, our drivers, when we have events, are already working 12-plus hour days, which isn't safe, as it is. And now we're going into this winter down 2 drivers. So, you're already talking about a level of service that's diminishing. For comparison's sake, Ramsey County has approximately the same centerline miles that we do, and they have triple the fleet. So, just something to think about. Not saying that we need to be there, but it's just something. Hennepin County, another example, you know, they promise 4 hours after an event and the roads are clear. So it's just kind of, you know, these things that we're dealing with. You know, when I had said this isn't something that's just one more thing, we already plow 36 Forest Service trailheads. You can see that we had plow maps put together, and I had our maintenance supervisor, Josh Dix, you know, spent a lot of time combing through them to find all these kind of extra little things. So I think it's about 36 other Forest Service trailheads, 6, and then another 6 DNR trailheads as well. So we're already doing extra. I mean, I can get into how much it costs, you know, I mean, whatever. We would bill for somewhere around $5,000 a season. To me, it's not so much the money, it's the time. You know, we already plow the grade is a wonderful example of that. That's a Forest Service road. So, like I said, I think I would love to do more, but we need to have a much bigger discussion about that.
Yeah, and so I'm assuming with the 36 and 6, there's agreements in place, and
Maybe.
So we need to have,
because some of them, a lot of them are just
Yep.
off the road, you know. So that's
Sure.
where it's kind of like, okay, it's right there.
Sure.
I think Murmur Creek, that trailhead might be the longest, I'll call it detour we might have to make on a plow route. That's off of 45, so we just go down, plow the trailhead, and come out. You know, this is 2 miles off of 48 well, I mean, I hope it's not a factor in it, but somebody's private business is at the end of this as well. So I don't know what kind of precedent that starts to set as well for our other outfitters, you know, in the community. You know, I can think of, you know, when you brought up Visit Cook County, Oberg Mountain, that's super busy. Arguably probably one of the busiest. We don't plow that. We provide a little bit of salt sand. You know, similarly, the Banadad Ski Trail, that could be another argument for why not that one. Like I said, I would love to, but we need to have a larger discussion then.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, Commissioner Storley?
Thank you. So Mr. Benson brought this to the Parks and Trail Commission. Did somebody talk to him previously to bring this to their attention?
Well, my understanding is Dave Williams,
Okay.
because that's who talked to me, and then I had
Oh.
asked, I said, well, that sounds like a good highway advisory committee discussion.
Okay.
And so.
Well, that's where I'm going.
Yeah, and I think the issue is kind of that safety and the level of equipment that's needed for that length and for potentially the volume of snow that happens. And yeah, there is a private business there, but these are, you know, the Bally Creek Ski Trails are not his private business. He is currently contracted to groom them. But I think there's just challenges with both the road side of things as well as with the grooming side of things and just the combination, so.
Well, my concern is, one, that there is the private business there, and that he does plow some. I've been back in there. It's negotiable, depending upon the snowfall, and
Right.
he can't wing it, that's for sure.
Right, yep.
But does he have any skin in the game? No?
Well, what do you-
Because he has a business back there.
Well, I don't understand.
Well, I mean, is he saying, I'll work with you with the highway department, and I'll put in, you know, some extra money to help do this, because it benefits the business and the folks who are coming back there to ski on the trails, or is it just an expectation that the county will take it over?
I think the ask that I've heard is really for assistance, not for a total takeover. I think when we get those heavier snowfalls, then that's when he really needs that greater help. And so I don't know what current expectations are. I called Mr. Williams a while back, and it wasn't a good time, and we haven't connected since that attempt. So I don't know exactly, but I see it as an opportunity for some collaboration. But if, you know, I don't expect us as a board to take the recommendation and run with it without having a bigger conversation. But that's just me.
Well, Yeah, I think the timing too, for the highway department, if you get a big snow, then you go. If you don't, how do you work that out then, as to when to do it?
Well, that's something our maintenance supervisor, Josh Dix, watches closely. I don't think he sleeps much during the winter, but, watching the weather, trying to figure out where and when to go. It's easy when it snows 8 inches.
Yeah.
Obviously go. But, those shorter ones, so they make the determination there on when to go. And, like I had said, and I want to reiterate, to me, it's not about the dollar amount. That's whatever. It's just the resources. It's not just one plow event. A lot of you have lived, well, all of you, I guess except James, have lived here a lot longer than I have. So we know how much it snows. So it's going there, however many events per year, 10, 15, 20 times of plowing that stretch of road. For what it's worth as well, a different contractor does the first part of Bally Creek Road. So from 48 to Brazil is plowed by somebody else. Dave only does from Brazil to the end of it. So for whatever that's worth, but just to kind of keep it all above board, I guess.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Swalson.
Well, what I'm hearing on this is that we do have some instances where we are doing this, and I would also say when they come in on the individual ones, they on the eaches, they all look good, and doable. But what I'm hearing from our highway engineer is that we've hit a point right now with our current staffing and equipment that to take on another one is going to cause a hardship, and we need to step back away from these types of requests until we make a larger decision about staffing and equipment for the county. Because if you look at them just on the individual ones, they will all look good. And they'll all look reasonable. Although 2 miles doesn't sound reasonable to me. I'm just being honest. That's a big ask, to do that. But my view of this one is I'm not inclined to go with it because of what I've heard today on where we're at with staffing and equipment. And we as a county would need to step back and say, how much are we really willing to take on? And if that is our premise, if that's what our vision is for the highway department, then we have some other decisions to make that will cost the county some money and more staffing and more equipment to be able to accomplish that. And if that's our vision, okay, but we just have to align the budgets to meet the vision.
Right. And that's the bigger conversation.
Mr. Chair.
Administrator Rocky.
Excuse me. So just piggybacking off of what Robbie and Commissioner Swallowson just said. Robbie mentioned the 2 drivers that were down in the highway department. We have 12 vacancies organization-wide. And employers are having a very difficult time finding new people. And we have the added obstacle in the highway department where our current labor contract does not allow us to start new staff at anything above the beginning step. So even if we get an applicant who's qualified, we can't start them above, I believe it's $18 and change an hour. And so, being in this situation where we are short-staffed across the organization, we've seen here in the county that, when private businesses don't have enough staff, they have to change the way they operate. And sometimes that means curtailing hours of operation. Robbie talked about our drivers working 12-hour days and the safety problem that presents. If we're 2 drivers down, if we're two drivers down and we have a heavy snow event, we can't be asking our guys to drive 16 hours a day. That's not going to happen. So at that point, we have to start doing triage and reducing service. And that's the reality of where we are right now. And so, when I see a request like this and I think about the situation that we're in, I'm troubled that we're plowing any roads that aren't county roads. That's problematic. And if we do have to scale back operations this winter because we don't have enough staff, we're going to have to do some triage and prioritize which routes get plowed first. So I just want to put that on the table. And as context for consideration of this item, because we're in a bad spot right now. And I don't want to open the door to our taking on more work when we can't already do the work that we're already obligated to do.
Thank you, Administrator Yorkie. Yeah, of course, I want to do everything we can to help. I want to promote our outdoor recreation opportunities as much as possible. I want to, keep things going, but my ideals, can't take priority over the reality of our situation. And so, I still want to work towards this. I still want to have more conversations about how we can get to this point, but the reality is that we're not there right now. So we can't do this right now. At least that's how I'm seeing reality. It seems like we're in general agreement. Are there any other comments or questions, thoughts? And it seems like steps forward are even going to be a little bit bigger than we're able to handle at the current moment. But
I think also there's just too many unknowns. We don't know how much finance could be put in by Dave Williams. I mean, what his contribution would be. There's not enough staff. We have to look at additional trucks. We're talking about growing pains. I appreciate that. And I think this is a huge discussion. It's more than just this particular request that we have to examine. So given that, I am not in favor of moving forward with this, personally.
yeah,
Mr. Chair,
yes, Commissioner Swalson.
I would make a motion that we would deny the request from the U.S. Forest Service for plowing 1.9 miles of Bally Creek Road to the trailhead.
Thank you, Commissioner Swalson. We have a motion. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Like I said, I want to keep moving forward in this direction, but it's just even the first steps are fairly daunting considering our staffing needs and just financial needs are still real, that as well. So if there's more work that can be done with other partners, I welcome that. But for the time being, I think we're all on the same page here, unfortunately. Any other discussion? No. Hearing or seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Thank you, Engineer Haas, as well.
Thank you.
And now we're on to item D, Tofte Homestead CUP Amendment. Mr. Nelson.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. This last item, it's a proposed amendment to a plan unit development, which is a conditional use permit for the Tofte Homestead development project. This was originally proposed and approved back in 2000, has gone through a few different changes. For the sake of expediency, I'm not going to read through the entire packet or anything. I'll just talk about the Planning Commission meeting. We did hold the Planning Commission meeting on Wednesday, October the 20th. Mr. Risdall was there in attendance representing BFB Management. Basically, there was a lot of discussion with regards to the request, and that was to construct up to 14 apartments and up to 7 retail office spaces within that development project. And Craig Horak did speak up on behalf of the Tafty Design Review Committee, who they had met and went ahead and offered support for the project. The Planning Commission was in general in support of the project as well, but did have some concerns with regards to the septic system, the condition of the septic system that's on the site itself right now, and what is being proposed, and then also with regards to length
of time in terms of rentals. There was a concern that they did not want that to turn into just an extended branch of Bluefin for nightly rentals or anything like that. They wanted it to have actual work, housing available to the community and such. And so basically, it kind of boiled down to the recommendation that is being brought to you today, which was supported unanimously by the Planning Commission, was to go ahead and approve the amended request with the two conditions: that the property demonstrates full compliance with the Minnesota rules, Chapter 7080, the Cook County Septic Ordinance prior to construction, and that the apartments be rented for a minimum period of 120 days at any one time. And that time frame, the discussion had gone anywhere from 60 days to 6 months to a year. It kind of went back and forth. Mr. Risdell represented that through the funding that they are getting through the MHFA, that there are requirements for employment and such like that they have to go through those. So the Planning Commission, again, is forwarding this, their recommendation based off of the land use and the conditional use permit in and of itself, straight up. So that is their recommendation, and I guess I would just open it up for any questions that you might have. I think we've all heard the presentation on this probably once or twice. So.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Nelson. And I just had a question, I guess, starting off, is just, it looks really bad when it's 120 days or 90 days, because what we had been talking about was that 9 month, and so I just was wondering if you could clue us in on, the thoughts around that, or just logistics. I mean, I think it's really important to be flexible, but also there's strong community concern just about the type of housing and what it's used for. So,
if I could start from the Planning Commission or land use perspective side of it, we're looking at it. That 120 days came from a discussion relative specific to conditional use permit and the fact that conditional use permits run with the land.
Yeah.
They're a matter of property right, and looking at different mechanisms to be able to achieve the kind of desired effects that had been discussed with regards to open it up to community members and all that. That was a concern, and it was discussed, but they felt that from the conditional use and enforceability side of it from land services and this, because once we put conditions on a conditional use permit, then it's up to land services to go ahead and enforce that.
Okay.
So looking at enforceability and looking at the availability of other mechanisms, i.e. developers agreement and such like that, to achieve a different result, the balance or the compromise that was struck with the Planning Commission was to have it at 120 days or 4 months.
Okay.
So that was their perspective from the Planning Commission side.
And Mr. Chair and Commissioners, if I might add, there's a lot of seasonal employment in the tourism industry. The tourism industry would like to have much less by bringing more year-round employees into the county, but that gets the cart in front of the horse in terms of trying to do that before there's housing available for people full-time. So there are still summer students that come to work in the resort business. Domestic and international students coming on J1 work and travel programs. And many businesses in Cook County depend upon those. So the discussion also kind of involved what's the tenure of workers in Cook County? And 120 days is kind of a typical summer employment tenure or J1 employment tenure.
That helps me understand. Thank you.
So,
Yes, I see hands. I see motions. I see movements.
I need my turn.
Commissioner Saulson.
We'll just work our way down.
Yeah, there you go.
I want to start at a higher level, just because I did have some constituents reach out to me. Starting at a higher level, does this change anything about what was proposed and set out for the tax abatement during that general discussion? I mean, we still have the same number of units, the same number of commercial spaces, the sizes haven't changed, the basic uses of them haven't changed. Is that correct?
That's correct. There's just one minor inaccuracy. Mr. Nelson, the maximum number of commercial spaces is 6, not 7.
6.
But other than that, exactly the same. Nothing has changed.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that because
Yeah.
there seemed to be a little confusion in people reading through the package from the Planning Commission, and they saw a number of units, and someone questioned, were they in fact
Right.
adding additional units or something like this?
Right.
And I didn't read it that way, but I could see how somebody might. So I just wanted to confirm that piece of it first off, that's what it is. And then, you have a comment?
Well, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Swallowson, I just wanted to state too that much like we had our discussion with this last with regards to the perspective of the Parks and Trails Commission and that, and then the Highway Department and their perspective, it's the same with the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission, we didn't talk about the tax abatement. That wasn't entered into the realm, whatsoever as part of the consideration.
And agree that it
And-
doesn't need to, but the
Right.
results of what the Planning
Exactly.
Commission decided could have affected what our decision was and what it was based on. And so I just wanted to
Right.
clarify. I didn't think it had changed it when I read it, but some others thought it had, and so I just wanted to clarify that here, and for the public. Then the next piece was, as I understood, we had as part of our agreement for the tax abatement, we had said that an agreement would be written, and we had, I believed, given that to Ready Powers to actually help, craft that and put it together. And I would just asking the question, does this 120 days, does that then set that time for him, or is there still, because I thought that was something to be worked out as we went through. And I read this just as you stated it, Mr. Nelson, that this is within the bounds and for the lifetime of, because it's a conditional use permit, this is what you were allowed to do. It didn't prescribe it as this is it forever.
Well, and so my understanding, and I'll need everyone's help here, is that what our intentions with the abatement happen for the life of the abatement.
Correct.
And then the CUP is for
Correct.
the life of
And
it.
that was exactly how I saw
Yeah,
it as
okay.
well, although I couldn't, when I was responding to folks, I couldn't put it quite that.
Okay, yeah. And I had,
Succinctly,
yeah,
because I'm not
I
a
didn't
succinct
understand
person
that.
sometimes.
Yeah. And I didn't.
Thank you.
Well, if it wasn't
Well,
me, I
it
was.
is a different situation. We had the abatement piece, and that's what I was just clarifying here. We still have to craft that document. The county will
Right.
work with you and with the other developer and put those together and lay that out. And so those are two separate and distinct units. They may arrive at the same position. I'm not trying to prescribe it. I'm just trying to make sure that it is two separate agreements that are put together, that we are yet to put together ours for that piece of it.
Yeah.
That's how I understood it, and I was just looking to clarify if that was true.
Yeah. So another way to look at this is if we had not done the abatement whatsoever,
Yep.
if the proposal was for this, then that's their own, that's, the request business, and we can look at it that. But because we're working through the abatement process, of course, our minds are tied to that, and then it's
That's
like, well,
right.
wait. So during the life of the abatement, our developer's agreement applies, but the conditional use permit applies for beyond the abatement for the life of that.
So I appreciate you bearing with us through that discussion, because I just wanted to put that out there and have that recorded, that's the two separate things. What we're going to discuss and approve or disapprove today on this is just this conditional use permit changes that are there, and that it really doesn't have any meaningful effect on the discussion and things that we had previously on the abatement piece, although we do need to make this, we have to have this piece, clearly. The conditional use permit has to come
Right.
together and line up
Right.
with the overall agreement.
What, Mr. Nelson, yeah.
And just real quick, Mr. Chair, Mr. Isdall had noted that it is actually 6 rental units or 6 retail office. The only reason that 7 is in there is because that's was written in the application itself. So I would suggest that when a decision is made, that it would reflect, the decision itself would speak out 6 instead of 7, otherwise it would be 7. So I would just make that recommendation.
Thank you for recommending. And
If I might speak to the tenure of occupancy and the type of occupancy for a moment.
Sure.
We've had discussions with the commission, with the board on a few different instances, looking at this from different perspectives. I think it would be preferable for the limitations on who can live there and what the minimum tenancy should be to be within the developer's agreement and tied to the tax abatement, rather than a land use requirement that runs with the land. Because at some point, 50 years from now, who knows, the abatement's long since not being received anymore, and probably the landowner's hands shouldn't be tied at that point. And as Mr. Nelson comments, land use services probably doesn't want to be in that enforcement role. So I think it is, there's been, I think, a understanding that's been discussed from time to time that there will be a developer's agreement, and the conversation has come up that potentially language that was used for the Four Directions projects in Lutzen, that at least one resident of every unit needs to be employed full-time in Cook County, that language may be brought in. So I think there's work to do in that document, and the developer completely understands that that's going to be a limitation, both by Cook County for the duration of the abatement, but also by MHFA. And there could even be we could bring forth MHFA's language, maybe to Mr. Powers, and you could try to dovetail those to kind of clean all that up in one final document.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Storley.
Thank you. Good morning, Dennis. So I viewed the Planning Commission meeting last night, and I just wanted to get my head around what was being asked. Now I know what was being asked. But there's a lot of terms floating out there. And specifically, I just want to address, I thought in the tax abatement that we agreed on, that we were looking at this housing for workforce workers to be a year's lease or a year's introduction to living into that particular apartment. I also hear employee. I also hear workforce. Well, basically it is all the same. But I think when we have Brady write this up, it's got to be really technical, and it has to be specific. So as in Commissioner Svensson receiving calls and concerns, so have I. And we just want to get down to the nitty-gritty of the exact reason for having the apartments. They're for workforce and not for short-term rental, J people, all the alphabet people that we get, and that's important to house them too. But my understanding is that this is not for them, right?
Not for people here on visas?
That is for people who are going to commit to live and work in Cook County for starting a year.
Well, we did discuss this, I think, at maybe the tax abatement, or one of the times we've appeared before you relating to tax abatement. Everyone would like to get, employers would like to get to full-time year-round employees again, because oftentimes now there's a H-2B employee working for 8 or 9 months in the summer and the fall, and then there's a J1 person being trained in for that same position during the winter, and it's very inefficient. But that's not going to happen overnight. There needs to be more housing so more people can come up, families can get established in Cook County, and who can take year-round jobs. To have apartments that cost a lot to build and maintain sit empty for some period of time when there's a need for housing, essential workers, because we haven't lured enough people into the county to live here year-round yet, is impractical. I think one place the year term came into discussion is, I believe in Four Directions, once a year they require proof by each tenant that they're employed. It's not that they have to be employed year-round, it's that that's the frequency they've chosen to use to regulate that requirement. Also, Commissioner, when an employee is hired, they're not obligated to stay and work for the same company for a year. So that would be an impractical requirement from an employment law and relations issue as well.
Well, here's the reality in the county. Our administrator told us this morning that we have 12 openings in the county, and they're not coming to work for 6 months. Anybody that we would hire is a full-time job, and they need a place to live until they maybe have a chance to buy a home. So that's the difference that I'm trying to get at. Yes, I understand. I understand the employer's situation of needing to have a place for, I call them temporary, because they're here 6 months, they leave, somebody else comes in. But I don't know, is that what we were agreeing to? Were we agreeing in the tax abatement that it would be for temporary workers?
Well, the tax abatement discussion is not what we're addressing on the agenda right now. And it sounds like we do need to have more discussions about that. And so what I would like to try to do, which is really, really hard in my mind, and I'm sure for everyone, is to separate abatement from the CUP request. Because, it's clear to me that we need to talk more about the abatement and the developers agreement there. Even though we did authorize Brady to just do it, I think we do need to have more conversation there. So right now, what we're trying to talk about is just the CUP request. And how I'm trying to look at this separately is just, does this fit the requirements for a CUP request? That's kind of the long and short of it. It's not the whole picture, and we need to have more discussion. And how I left the abatement discussions is that we were all on a real similar page. And but the CUP request, I think, has kind of thrown things up a little bit, and things are falling out different places and differently for different people. So we'll need to revisit that. But for right now, it's just about this request. Commissioner Hawkins.
Yeah, so I have a question about the CUP and the fact that the 120 days at a time was inserted in there from the Planning Commission. And previously, you said you didn't want to have to deal with one-year leases and checking on them. Aren't you going to check on the 120-year leases? That they aren't? 120 day, I mean, yes, not year. I'm thinking years.
All right, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hawkins, that is an excellent question, and it does put us in our department in a difficult scenario of having to try to enforce. We're not going to knock on doors or whatever the case may be. Much of what we would have to enforce in that respect would have to come from complaints or something. So it does definitely put us in a very difficult position to try to enforce something like that. It would make more sense, as the chair had identified that, and that's the comment that I was going to make, is that these are distinct functions, where the conditional use permit is the overlying use of the land. So we grant and say, okay, it's okay to use it for this particular purpose, and then it would be up to other functions or documents, such as the abatement, developer's agreement, and that kind of stuff, to really dictate what those terms would be, whereas this is kind of the use. So if you actually dropped the requirement for the 120 days, it wouldn't break my heart, but it was, I do have to present it as being a part of the Planning Commission, because it did go through that, and there was a lot of discussion, and that was what the concern was, and I think they were looking for that, try to bridge that element of having it, not having it as nightly rentals, and then having it to be able to accommodate the workforce housing. But do we want a year or not a year? And if you watched that last night, then you did see that was, part of that discussion going back and forth. So that was an attempt at a compromise. But yes, it would be exceedingly difficult to enforce something like that.
So I'm going to go back to the CUP and suggest we go back to 1 year to be consistent with our intentions, and also because we have to remember the CUP stays with the land, regardless if this tax abatement or this building project ever even happens. I want to make sure this land can still be used for commercial, but whoever does something with it later, it has to be year-round, year-round housing for permanent people that live here. That's what we need in our community. And I want to make sure we make that piece of land stay that way. And it's regardless of whether or not any other project happens.
Is there any other CUPs or projects that have been treated the same way?
I have no clue.
No.
I'm new at this.
I don't think the county
No.
has authority.
Let's ask Mr. Nelson.
There is not, Mr. Chair, and that, it makes, the enforcement of that is equally as difficult as if it's year-round, or if it's 120 days, or if it's 60 days. If there is a time frame on occupancy, you know, we don't have the building code. We don't operate the Universal or Minnesota State Building Codes, so we don't issue certificates of occupancy. We don't deal with the interior or interior use of it unless it's commercial versus residential. And so it really does put us in a difficult enforcement kind of scenario, regardless if it's 120 days or 60 days or 1 year period of time.
But wouldn't this preclude then, if it changes hands or some other project is up here, that it doesn't become overnight vacation rentals or even 4-month vacation rentals? Because we have those too. So that's why I'm saying we need to make sure that whatever we're passing is in the aspect of making sure we have full-time, year-round workforce housing in our community and not another opportunity for more short-term rentals.
And that's what we would look for the other agreements to have in place for that as an enforcement tool, the abatement agreement.
Commissioner Spalson?
Well, and I guess my basic item that I had was is it within the legal ability of the actual planning commission to set this type of requirement? Legally, can you even enforce it through a planning? Does that support that? I just didn't know. When I read it, I was kind of surprised to see it there, and so that's why I was asking the question. I'm not challenging it time-wise or otherwise. I just wasn't sure if we had.
Yeah, and that's
I think
what
we'd have to ask our county attorney whether that's even something that we have the legal right to try to enforce through whatever mechanism Mr. Nelson might try to devise.
Yeah, and that actually language is what always brought my mind back to the abatement and just our time frame, and that's what muddles it up for me. And that's why I was asking, is there any other conditional use that limits that? And you know, the closest thing that I can think of is just that 30-day when we did our short-term rental ordinance, just that 30-day threshold. But that's not a conditional use.
Right, I agree with you, Mr. Commissioner. Yep. I believe if you are going to impose something of that nature, I think legally, in my structured view of it, it needs to be done through an ordinance, not trying to be done through a planning commission. I think that's better set through an ordinance than in that situation.
Yeah.
But that's my not very educated view of that from a legal perspective. I think our county attorney would have to help us there.
Yeah.
Unless Mr. Nelson already has.
Mr. Nelson.
Yeah, he can help us all.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I did have some discussions with MCIT attorney about this particular case.
Great.
We do have certain amounts of flexibilities because the CUP is more than just a CUP, it's a planned unit development, which does give us a certain amount of flexibilities. But the more clarity that we have and the more legally bound that we are to existing provisions within existing ordinances and documents, the better and legally defendable we are. So if we were concerned about it having short-term rentals, that would be the strongest condition to put on, not necessarily shorter than 120 days, because that's a little bit arbitrary, but to have it as
no short-term or vacation rentals, because we have that time period specified in the ordinance. We have a separate ordinance for that. So if we were to go back and we were concerned about it being for short-term rentals, we can put that provision in, or that condition in.
In place of this
Yes.
120
Yeah.
day. At
That
least
doesn't
then it
go
would
to the
align with an
1 year
ordinance.
time frame, but at least we could eliminate the short-term or vacation rental aspect of it.
I think that gets us closer. We still have the other agreement that we can, work with on the developers agreement, but that's just my view. I don't want to speak for anyone.
Yeah, and I get it, that we have these separate agreements. I was thinking this week and going back to Senator Bach and making sure, he says precedents, follow precedents, so I want to make sure we have our ducks in a row and we're doing it the way we should, and I think all things pertaining to this project, this parcel, should match, and that one shouldn't say this and one says this, and so I just want to make sure I understand what it is I'm asking.
And it's
being
very
asked
hard
for.
to separate out the fact this is a conditional use permit. It's different than our development agreements.
Right, but we've had conditional use permits that gave hours of operation, or it set different limits, so that's what I'm struggling with you saying, we can't say 1 year, but we can tell this one over here, you can't have anybody on your, it's only for these hours that you can operate, and so I am struggling, because I really want to see 1 year in here.
Well, the easy distinction between hours of operation are generally for commercial operations, and part of the conditions or contemplation of conditional uses are the impacts on neighbors, be they noise, dust, all these different things. So it is far more of an impact when it comes to commercial operations and hours, like a gravel pit or something like that. Yes, that's fairly common, but not in terms of occupancy. We don't have any that we've ever have said you have to have a year's lease. So we would be creating precedents as opposed to following precedents if we were to do that.
Correct.
I would like to add one more thing on this topic. If the developer was coming forward saying, I want to build this as a nightly rental apartments and commercial use, that would be allowable, that would be encouraged by the Tafty design review, or the Tafty land use guide plan, and actually by the county land use guide plan, and it would be allowed as a conditional use under Cook County's current zoning. But they wouldn't be very wise to be asking for any subsidies, and they certainly wouldn't get them, either in terms of tax abatement or MHFA. So to try to tie it now, because they're trying to build affordable workforce housing, to try to tie the land up forever, whether they build it or not, with a land use decision that forever precludes that, apart from getting any subsidies, seems illogical and maybe out of keeping with normal land use decisions. Does that make sense? I mean, people come in and apply to add new tourist hotels or condos all the time, and they get approval for that. They don't get tax abatement, and they don't get Minnesota Housing Finance Agency money because they're doing something that is for profit in the open market. So here, really, the restrictions should, I think, be tied to any and all financial assistance, because the whole point is workforce housing rentals do not justify the cost of building, and workforce is getting displaced because the economics of second home ownership, retirement home ownership, and VRBO use are way more lucrative for landowners than workforce housing.
Mr. Nelson.
One way that we could have a consistency between the documents, since that is an important thing, is instead of specifying a date or a condition in the conditional use permit approval, we could have a condition to state that the tenancy or occupancy would be as depicted or as described in the developer's agreement. So it references that document, and it becomes a condition as a part of this, which would marry the two of them together, which would be doubly as effective or enforceable. And then
it
the
would
details,
it would sunset with the developers.
then it would sunset.
Okay.
Well, and then what would happen after that sunset?
Well, then it doesn't have that provision, just like your other conditional use permits don't have that. So it actually answers the developer's point of don't tie me to something on an occupancy for the rest of perpetuity with this land. I'm only looking or prescribing to that as a condition for the abatement during the time of the abatement. Now, the abatement is for 15 years, so you get 15 years worth of occupancy and this type of thing per the agreements. It sounds to me like a reasonable method to tie the two and stop the confusion between the two documents. I think it's probably the most eloquent way to just deal with it and tie it, and then.
Well, I don't know that it'll stop confusion.
Well, I guess I was remiss in saying it would stop my confusion.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty interesting.
So given our discussion, I'd like to make a motion.
There you go.
Okay.
Let's do that.
So I'd like to move to accept the recommendation from the Planning Commission to amend the conditional use permit for Bluefin Bay Management to construct up to 14 apartments and 6 retail office spaces at the Tofte Homestead development in Tofte with the following conditions. 1, the property demonstrates full compliance with Minnesota Rule Chapter 7080 and the Cook County Septic Ordinance prior to construction. And 2, that occupancy is as depicted in the development agreement.
For do you want to take for the tax abatement?
For the tax abatement. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I would support that.
We have a motion and support. Further discussion. So what you're saying is after the abatement, so how I hear that motion, it doesn't have any minimum period after the abatement for the land.
Correct.
And so the thought there is that this makes it cleaner. It is addressing the community's needs for these 15 years, and then it goes back to kind of whatever the market is. Is that how I'm
Correct.
understanding it? And so I will call on you, but so my concern is that we do have some other examples in our community of housing that has had money tied to it for the length of the mortgage. Those mortgages are now ending or soon. And so that puts it back into the market. And that is going to potentially have a very significant impact on our already strained housing needs. And those mortgages were 30-year, and here we are talking 15-year. And if our housing needs are satisfied in these next 15 years, I'll be very, very impressed. So I do have concerns about that sunset. I don't have a good answer, however, for the 120-day enforcement or just the life of that. I think it's made clear what all of our intentions are as far as meeting the workforce housing. I just don't know the best language or the best route there. Commissioner Hawkins.
I agree. I'm concerned about the way that a motion is worded, that it does end, and we go back to having a problem. I'm more comfortable with saying 1-year leases, because how many amendments have you gone through already? You've amended this plat numerous times to meet your conditions. There's nothing to prevent them from doing that again at some other point. The abatement's paid off, they say, hey, you know what, we just can't make it with year-round people living here anymore. We need to do something else. Well, it comes before the board then, and they can amend the CUP, just like we're doing now. We're amending a CUP. We're fixing it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I had a similar thought. I was wondering about that. Thank you for bringing that up. And forgive me, Mr. Risdall. Oh, we got two hands. You know, I was wondering about that, the 9-month versus the 120-day, and in the 9-month, of course, is for the abatement. And now the 120-day, that meets another, you know, the summer worker, right? Like that could work in how the business side of the operation, you know, just financially, it's less of a risk. That 9-month is, you know, maybe unfair to go beyond the abatement, but can you talk a little bit about the difference in that 9-month time frame that we were talking about with the developers agreement versus the 4-month? Is that a different worker? Because we're also, you know, talking about year-round, you know, and so if you could just walk us through that once more, and sorry for having to do it again.
You know, it seems to me the operative difference here is who's living there.
Okay.
And the way it's been described in the 4 directions, occupancy requirements is one must be employed full-time. That pretty much eliminates vacationers. I think that probably if the developer right now had to accept a 1-year minimum occupancy, he probably wouldn't go forward, because as the county's found out, it's not that easy to fill a place up with people moving up here for 1 year and willing to sign a 1-year lease. I think he would be sentencing himself to a lot of units empty for parts of years. How we get people to stay here long-term often is we lure them up and they fall in love with the area. We have people now in leadership roles who lived in yurts and tents through the year before they finally found a housing opportunity. We have people living and raising families in the community who came on J1 and H2B visas and found ways to stay here and become part of the community. But they couldn't commit to a year occupancy when they came. So I just think that the issue here should be, they're occupied by people working here, not by people vacationing here or retiring here. And to get into limited duration of employment, I mean, could the county guarantee that everyone you hire is going to stay for at least 1 year in employment? Well, then, are they going to guarantee, are they going to sign a 1-year lease?
Right.
It's just, you're asking too much. There's a trial and error process that happens when people try to come and make a life up here. And we love those that succeed because business needs more year-round people in staff and leadership roles. And it's very expensive to churn through all the seasonal people that are now being hired to incrementally fill those positions. But I don't see that being accomplished by a rule like this. I see that kind of working against allowing people to get up here and find a way to establish themselves as permanent residents. So I believe that the correct tie is for the financing assistance, in your case, tax abatement, in MHF's case, construction grants, to tie to the fact that they're full-time workers.
Thank you. Of course, I shy away from the full-time, but workers that live and work here.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Mr. Nelson, I've been ignoring you unintentionally.
No worries,
Please.
Mr. Chair. It does seem like we've ventured into the discussion for the developers agreement portion of it. And I think it is very important. Obviously, there's a lot of concern and a lot of interest there that do need to be covered. And I think it does need to be clearly defined. I do believe that is probably the mechanism for that, to feel a whole lot more comfortable with that as a condition referencing that agreement. And I would say that I don't know why, this is just kind of a recommendation when you're talking about the agreement. It sounds like it's either an all or nothing. I don't know why you couldn't say so many units have to be this or so many units have to be that. It would seem to me like you could accommodate probably all the concerns by simply saying some of this and some of that. That's just an observation. Secondly, I think tying it into the developer's agreement then takes that enforceability off it, has that. It's a clear thing. It joins the documents, makes it very clearly definable. And also, yes, 15 years, things can change. Tofte's sub-area plan is probably due for an update. And I think, to answer the question in terms of when the 15 years ends, this goes to market. Well, it doesn't necessarily go to market. What it does do is it goes to the underlying zone district that is. And right now it's the Tofte mixed use zone, and there's plenty of time. And I would expect that Tofte would update its plan or thoughts for that their area in between now and then as well, and to reflect what they would like to see in development trends moving forward anyway. So their decisions would kind of dictate what would happen from that point going forward as well. So it's really hard for us to, you look back 15 years ago to where we are now, it's quite a bit different than what we had anticipated. We're already struggling with our 2016 update of our comp plan. So to project out 15 years to know what's going to go on, I think it's probably high time for Tofte to take a look at it in between now and then anyway. So I think the cleanest way is probably just to go ahead and tie those documents together. We are under a state-regulated timeframe with which we have to either decide in favor of or deny the conditional use application. We have time to be able to negotiate that agreement out, and I think tying it to that probably will serve a better purpose.
Just one more comment on this aspect of it. As you know from past appearances, I was involved in building 14 units of housing under a couple of affordable housing programs with MHFA back in 2001. At that point, they had 30-year term mortgages. Some of the loan was forgiven after 15 years if it was kept if the units were consistently rented within their requirements, which at that time was to people who earned 80% or less of rural Minnesota statewide median income. But the developer could not developer could prepay the loan, but they were still tied to a requirement that ran with the land for a minimum of 20 years, even if they prepaid the loan, because MHFA is taking into account that we gave them interest-free money to build the building, so we're going to require at least 20 years of affordable housing use, even if they choose to prepay the loan before that. So we will see MHFA's rules related to workforce housing in time to try to consider that language in the way that your development agreement is written. And MHFA puts a lot of thought into this because they deal with it all the time. So I'm agreeing with Mr. Nelson that approving it as a conditional use permit amendment subject to the developer's agreement addressing the occupancy issue is maybe the best decision, because it also gives time to get and analyze and look at MHFA's language and maybe use theirs as the same minimum requirement or something.
Thank you.
And then one other topic, and this is a technical thing, I believe the wording is construction couldn't begin until compliance with the septic ordinance is completed. Well, construction includes the construction of the septic system, so maybe if occupancy wouldn't be allowed until that compliance is reached would be more practical.
Well, I think it's, it is a technical thing, but to build anything, you need to have your plan in place, your septic plan. It's not that you need to have your system in place, so I think
Okay,
that's.
so the approval of the plan is tantamount to or compliance? Okay, good.
That is, you have to prove that your intent is to bring it into compliance
Okay,
as you construct.
very good. Thank you.
Okay, well, yeah, any other thoughts, questions? Commissioner Hawkins?
I just have one more point of clarification from Mr. Risdall. So the developer can make the developer for this project can make the developer's agreement work financially to make those numbers work. But if we specify in a CUP a 1 year, you're saying that's tying their hands. And I'm still have this disconnect of why that won't work here, but it will work over here. You know what?
I don't understand the question.
Okay, so in our developer's agreement,
Yep.
in this whole tax abatement, we're talking about 1 year, long-term, full-time people that live and work in Cook County.
Okay.
But if we put some language saying that it has to be 1 year lease in the CUP, it's not going to work. And that will cause problems for finding people to live there. Well, no, over here we said it's going to happen. We have 12 openings here at the courthouse. We have openings at the school. We know we need full-time, year-round housing in Cook County. So I have no doubt that these apartments are going to get rented.
Well,
I'm still confused why it won't work to say minimum of a year.
I think it could work, but it's a risk. And the developer's agreement, you know, the whole development plan has it built out line by line with how, and Ellers looked over that, right? So that's how that was figured out. And then beyond that, you know, because it's for the life of the property, or forever, or whatever, unless there's an amendment, which I think is an excellent point. And that's where, when I moved up here, I wouldn't have rented for 1 year. I would not have signed a 1 year. Well, maybe I would have broke it. So I do hear that, you know, the best way to get people up here is not with the 1 year lease. For some people, on the other hand, that could be peace of mind, and so they would be looking for that. For other people, it's too restrictive, and so that's where I'm balancing just the flexibility. You know, we want to try to attract as many people as we can, not as many, but, you know, we need more workforce, right? We need to attract more workforce, and so that's where I see there being a strength with that flexibility, is being more attractive with that flexibility, but I guess you could look at it either way.
Well, no offense, but I really don't want to see this project get used up for J1 workers for Bluefin Bay. We know you have needs, but we also have needs, and there's taxpayer dollars going in. So I'm just trying to make sure that we're all on the same page, that this is for full-time, year-round housing. Whether or not it's Bluefin Bay's tax abatement project or not, we're giving a conditional use permit to develop 14 apartments and 6 retail spaces, regardless if it's Bluefin Bay or somebody, whoever builds it, right? That's what we're agreeing to. And I want to make sure it's for year-round, full-time workers.
Well,
Commissioner Hawkins, MHFA's rule was there couldn't be discrimination for or against anyone, including who they work for. So that would be a more appropriate inclusion into the developer's agreement than minimum tenancy, is that they be available for any employees working anywhere in the county on a full-time basis, and that the developer's employees do not get any preferential treatment. That's how MHFA handles it, and I think that would be a very fair requirement, because it's not the intent of the developer. Obviously, the developer employs a lot of people very close by. So what MHFA requires is that the borrower document all of the applications for rental, and when there's a vacancy, address those in the order of application. That's how they have the ability to come in and audit that. That's how they regulate and enforce that provision. But their workforce housing program says there has to be at least one person employed full-time living there, which kind of gets rid of somebody that maybe moves up for the summer and takes a part-time job at a gift shop just for the fun of it, which you don't want either. And the developer doesn't want that. That doesn't help him enough. So it's the full-time employment rather than the duration of employment and therefore lease that I think is the important issue, and that's the issue that the developers kind of banked upon in putting this whole project together.
And my understanding was that the J1 H2B workers are expensive. It is not an ideal business situation, and we need people. We need workers, you know. And if they're J1 or H2B, we need workers. And it's that's not who's necessarily going to be staying here, but it does seem discriminatory. And I think we're all on the same page intentions wise. It's just how we get to that place, and I see just incremental steps in that direction, and this being one of them. And I was uncomfortable with the language, but I've become more comfortable with it as far as tying it to the developer's agreement. I think that's maybe the way to go. So thank you for making the motion. We're still discussing here. Should have been timing the discussion, but
well, and I think it is important, as what we've heard, is by tying the two now, it allows the developer's agreement to be better informed with the information and the insights that these other lending or grant folks have, because we're trying to solve an issue here that these folks have dealt with to such a much greater extent. And I'm sure the language and things that they have developed has been challenged through the courts in this type of thing. And that's where my concern is that whatever we put together does not discriminate, does not create other hardships that we didn't intend. And I think it is a better way to tie it in and bring that knowledge and insights and history in from these others that we can then consider to put in the developer's agreement.
Mr. Chairman.
Minister Yorkie.
Yes. Mr. Isdall, I have a question. Would there be anything that would preclude, say, the county or ISD 166 or North Shore Health from, once the development is done, from leasing a couple of units that the county or the hospital or the school would pay for as sort of a landing pad for new employees, and that we could bring employees in and they would stay for some minimum period. I guess I'm just asking about sort of subleasing options, because one thing that I'm really interested in is making sure that as new housing becomes available, that some of these essential organizations that provide services to full-time residents have the opportunity to access that housing for employees. And so I'm just wondering what your thoughts about that are.
I would say the developer would love it because there's some security there. I'm not sure that subleasing is going to be allowed within MHFA's rules.
May not.
But if I think that I think I can speak for the developer in saying he would be all in favor of that if there's no other preclusion of it in any other of the legal relationships that they're entering into for financing. I'd love to see something like that personally.
Commissioner Storley.
Thank you. So Dennis, how soon do you think we can get something from MFHA guidelines? How soon do you think we could review those?
I think they finally published all of their application system a few weeks ago, so I'm well into that. So I believe all of the details of the program are resolved. I believe I could get that upon request very quickly.
Okay, that'd be great. We could move forward then in looking at that.
All right, any further discussion here on this motion? Commissioner Hawkins, please.
Yeah, I kind of would like our attorney's advice about a CUP tied to a developer's agreement, and what happens if that developer's agreement is never signed, or, I mean, I hope it does. I hope everything works out. But what happens to this if that doesn't happen?
It's a contingency.
So if that developer's agreement doesn't happen, then does that mean this conditional use permit is void?
That is correct. It would have to be re-reviewed.
Correct.
The applicant would have the option to be able to get the developer's agreement. All avenues have to be exhausted. But yes, in essence, a condition is a condition. So if the condition is not met, then the permit is not valid.
Thank you.
Now, my understanding is we're, under a little time constraint I mean, that might not be clear in our meeting today, as long as it's going. But it seems a little circular here as far as MHFA and what their requirements are and what's needed. And so is this going to be tying things up in a circular, or is this going to be straightforward here? Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, this is a standalone. The conditional use permit is good, and as long as there's faith going towards the developer's agreement in that sense, or the tax abatement agreement, whatever you want to call it, and the project isn't being constructed. I mean, we certainly have to adhere to the 70-80 rules and get the plans and everything in place, but prior to any of that actual physical activity going on, is when we need that agreement in place. The fact that it's under discussion and hasn't been agreed on yet is not going to void the permit.
Okay. Mr. Isdell?
MHFA's final deadline for a full application is January 11th.
Okay, thank you.
And the rating system puts the highest value on readiness to proceed, which means all financing in place and all permitting in place. So there's a little time left, but it's not indefinite.
That was my last concern, I think, there was just if we're hurting our odds or whatever, so. Okay. Any further discussions, questions, comments? We've done good here, I think. Then I'll call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Was that?
Yeah, I was debating. No, you can put me as a yes.
Okay, thanks.
She saw me go.
I saw movement, so thank you for clarifying. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I do appreciate the spirited discussion. I think everybody's intent is heading in the same direction. It's a matter of figuring it out the first time around.
And talking through things, I think, helps immensely.
Yeah.
So thank you for your efforts there and your involvement.
Ron, thanks for all
Mr.
your
Nelson.
time and patience on this project as well.
Can I just
appreciate it.
confirm the motion too? It's as written here, under D, as Ann read, with 6 units.
Mm-hmm.
And then instead of number 2, apartments are to be rented. Instead of that, we have occupancy is depicted in the economic development agreement.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Break.
Well,
No time for a break now.
yeah. Do we need a break? If we need a break, then I guess we need a break. Yeah, 10 minutes. what is that, 11, let's say 11:50 then, that's 12 minutes. Is,
I just need 5.
oh, well. 45. Time flies.
Oh, we're having so much fun.
It's very
It's a
engaging.
very stressful morning.
I'm sorry.
Computer from the county?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Mine's 5 years old.
Is it?
Do you think I should ask for an upgrade?
You certainly can. Well, these little ones are very handy.
Yeah.
Their battery power is incredible.
Yeah, they
I have
do a
used it-
really great
I
job
have
with the
used it for
battery.
like 4 days not plugged in,
Really?
and it holds up. Part of the reason, though, if you work in low light conditions, it'll frustrate you
Oh.
because the keyboard never lights up. There is no backlit keyboard.
Oh.
So many of them, if you're accustomed to using one with a backlit keyboard, that's the only thing about it I've found, Jenny, that is like a little frustrating
Yeah.
to me, because it's like, I
Okay.
gotta go move to where there's a light, you
Better
know,
light,
to be
okay.
able to work. But other than that, no, it's great, it's very, you know, it's compact, it's small. I like it.
Okay. All right, well, I will discuss it real quick.
Yeah, it's really easy, you know, when I'm
Yeah.
traveling and these kind of
Oh,
things.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
I was amazed, I even threw it in my bag and took it out with me when I was gone
Okay.
earlier, and then sat there and I was like, did I bring that with me? I didn't, because, you know, it doesn't have any weight or anything. You're like, wait
Yeah.
a minute, did I put it in the bag or not?
Uh-huh.
Oh, nice.
Well,
All right.
this is what I have.
Gotcha.
That's a boat anchor.
Yep. Don't give anybody any ideas.
Yes, but it does light up, so that part is good.
Yeah. And that's what eats up your battery pretty fast, you know,
Yeah.
with that backlit keyboard and that kind of
I
thing.
didn't say that. I don't see any light. No.
No? Okay. Then it wouldn't bother you to have the,
Yeah. Well, we'll work on that.
I did a lap around the building. That was kind of nice. Just a walking lap. But hadn't actually looked at the finished stairs, so that was kind of neat.
Yeah.
Seeing those.
It's a beautiful morning today,
Yeah.
Yeah.
calm and
Gorgeous. Glad we got outside for our photo. Gets warm and stuffy in here after a while.
Temperatures are dropping though after Veterans Day. Well, we're all here.
Yay.
We
Ready
can-
when you are.
Yeah, we're 4 minutes early, but I think we can continue. That brings us to item 7, and we'll call it 7I because that's what the I was up in the consent agenda that we were going to talk, amendment to the Firewise service contract. If we can start there, Auditor Powers, that'd be wonderful. Yeah, Commissioner Hawkins,
I
did you
just
have?
had a question.
Yeah.
Of course, I didn't pull it up right away, so just a second.
No problem.
So when I was reading the actual contract, and I, again, wondering, is this something that we're approving an after the fact? Because if you go down into the contract, and it specifies the dates, work under this proposal shall be performed between October 13th, 2020 and November 30th, 2021, and after initial site meeting with the Firewise coordinator. So I'm just clarifying, are we going to get this done by November 30th?
No, that specific, no, that'll have to be changed.
So,
Because
and this happens quite a bit with Firewise contracts, that we
Yeah.
approve it, then we change it, then we.
Right.
Right.
So do we want to just fix it now? Or, I mean, what's the reason for it?
The reason for this is that money didn't get spent for different contractors in the Poplar. And the Forest Service has been very amenable since we're actually doing this for them in a sense. I mean, it's work they used to do, but now we do it, arrange this. So when there was money left there, they said, there's work in this same area, so this work we're describing here is actually would be in the Poplar area. I mean, these boundaries are not
Yeah.
that hard and fast. So they would allow us to do this contract that wasn't originally part of Poplar, to spend the rest of this money. So that's the reason. They've already granted us an extension to 2023, I think.
Correct.
March in 2023, we could literally make this coincide, and you could approve it as, and I could change.
Well, that kind of makes sense to me,
March.
that we
It isn't going
make
to
it
take that
match.
long, but
Yeah.
that's the technical length of the Poplar agreements, so we could make this match, and then the two would look the same if you approved it with
It
that.
just seemed
Yeah,
to me that you'd want it, because
I hadn't
it's
even
going to
noticed.
snow this weekend, so really,
Right.
they only have a couple days, and
So that's good. It's, if you would make that motion and agree to extend that contract to match
Be a
the
clean
Poplar
split.
agreement to
Dates.
March 30th, 2023.
March 30th, 2023, okay. I'll make the motion to approve the Firewise contract as amended by Brady.
March 30th, 2023, is that
Correct.
right? Okay. Thank you. We have a motion from Commissioner Hawkins.
I support.
We have second from Commissioner Swalson. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Oh, thank you, Mr. Keyport. Let's see, that moves us on, well, we'll go through the rest of the auditors now, if we may. This is item A, special meeting to hold public hearing and approve amendment to CIP plan.
Yeah, Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our bond attorney, Bob Tofte with Freiberger, worked on this when we did the 2018 bonds, and we did the first transportation and sales tax project, the County Road 17, or State Aid Road. And we approved the CIP plan at that time, and he said that plan needs to be amended to include this now. So back then in 2018, it included the engineering on CASA 42 through 45, so it included some engineering for this. CASA 15, the improvements to CASA 17, the Rural Run Bridge, not all those things were done with the money, but, and County Road 71, Carlson Creek Bridge, included the roof and windows in this building, the LEC, the Hovland, all of that was in our plan at that time, and the park improvements. So this amendment then, when it gets approved, will include that. So we have to have the public hearing. So this is just to approve having a public hearing and having a special meeting on the 16th in order to meet the November 23rd sale date. So we just ran out of time. So this is to approve the public hearing on that plan. Ellers will write the resolution. He's got it today, I think. And Freiberger writes the resolution, and Ellers will rewrite the plan. So
Okay.
we'll have both of those prior to, that should be in your agenda for the 16th.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions?
So this
Commissioner Hawkins,
this CIP is just for public bonding. It's not, we're talking about CIP
the
plans
big
in our
one.
budget committee, and
Yeah.
we're two totally separate plans.
This is
Okay.
a bonding requirement. You know, our bond attorney will not certify our bonding documents unless we do this. It's a step that's required. So.
Okay. But they are two separate,
This is
Plan.
this would be part of our larger plan, I would say.
Would
This
hope
is
so.
for bonding specific.
okay. Thank you. I
Yeah,
just
good
wanna make
question.
sure.
Very good question. All right. Any other questions? Bring them forward. Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would motion to set a special board meeting for 10:30 a.m. on November 16th to conduct a public hearing on the amendment to the capital improvement plan by Cook County under Minnesota statute 297 alpha dot 993 and 373.40 sub 3.
Thank you, Commissioner Saulson. We have a motion. Is there support?
Sullivan supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And Auditor Powers, we go to 7B, the airport agreement with professional services, RS&H.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is the master agreement that we've operated under for more than 15 years. I think it's 5 years at a time, but it lapsed, so it's longer than 555. But so this is basically the renewal of that agreement. This was the only response we got to the RFP, but the airport commission has reviewed it, this response, and then they reviewed the contract terms, et cetera, and recommend approval contingent upon final approval of the county attorney. I think she was working on it yesterday. I didn't see the final, so I'd say it's still contingent on her final. I think there's some insurance provisions that'll be added to, but I think that's the only change I've heard of.
Okay, thank you, Auditor Powers. Any questions about this item?
Yeah, sorry.
Commissioner Hawkins, yes, please.
Just because this is all new for me. So this is, we've had this consulting agreement in the works for quite a while. What do we pay for this agreement? I mean, what do we consult with them for? I'm just curious.
All of every one of the larger projects at the airport, we use RS&H They do the engineering if it requires engineering.
Okay.
They also do construction.
Like the runway
management.
extension?
All
They do
right.
construction administration on all the large projects. There's once in a while some small thing like buying a truck, some piece of equipment that they're not involved in. Other than that, they are the engineer and the construction. But each one of those has a work order, a specific agreement, which is shorter than this
Okay.
because they all refer back to the master agreement, which
All right.
has the more detailed that they're required to follow in all the agreements.
So I was just curious when I read the airport committee minutes that you sent out a request for proposals. Was that because
We
you were
sent-
looking for somebody new, because you weren't happy, or
No,
if you were?
we
okay.
always try to get multiple bids.
All right,
Yep.
just want to clarify, I understood
There
what
were-
this was.
There were other let's say,
One
that
other-
asked for information, 2 others, but
Yep.
it was I would say it was COVID and time. They didn't have time to think about it and respond to it
Mhm.
right now. They would have in a different year, different time, but.
And I'll just ask again, are we getting, we're supposed to be reviewing the airport's budget and approving it. Is that going to be coming before us when we
Sure.
do this budget
Yes.
process? Okay,
Yes.
I
Yeah,
just,
you have
I just
yeah.
I don't remember seeing it
Yeah,
yet, so.
no.
Like, what's the time frame here? All right, thank you. I just needed to make sure I understood what I was reading.
Yeah, thank you. Well, to be fair, I don't know that I fully understand the entirety of the agreement, but I get the gist of it and the history of it, and and do rely on our staff and attorney a lot in these cases. So, but I appreciate any details that catch my eye or anyone else's eye going forward. So I do appreciate the questions for sure. Any other questions, comments? And then I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Storley.
I make a motion to approve the agreement for professional services with RS&H Incorporated contingent upon review and approval of the county attorney.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. We have a motion. Is there support?
Sullivan supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. For moving on to Administrator's section, and we'll call it 8J. That goes up to the consent agenda. Approve the hire of a new deputy sheriff. Commissioner Hawkins, you had a question?
I
there.
just had a question about that. The last line in there where Sheriff Eliason said, "And I support the step 4."
Mhm.
That just struck me differently, that we usually don't have the department head recommending, and I'm just want to verify, I know HR transitions now, that, did this go through the personnel committee? Was this the recommendation of them and our HR department, or?
So,
Hiring doesn't go through personnel.
But doesn't, or, okay, I don't know the process, but looking at where a candidate falls in our wage scale is where,
Okay, yeah,
That's
the HR transition. Yeah.
that's what I
Yep.
don't know where.
and so, yeah, the great question, Commissioner. We have not had an HR director until, well, we had a gap, right? And so we did not go through our usual process in this instance. The sheriff looked at the candidate's experience. This deputy had worked for Cook County for a couple of seasons and also had experience with Hennepin County. And based on the tenure of that experience, the sheriff recommended a step 4. So we've not gone through the personnel committee or anything like that.
Okay, and, I mean, I have no problem with, if that's appropriate, accepting that. But we have a process, and I just want to make sure that a department head doesn't get to say this, but a
Right.
committee or our HR department says, oh, that shouldn't have been done that way.
Right.
I
And-
just want to make sure we're clear about what we're doing here.
Understood. Understood. And then ordinarily, we would go through a different process, but because of staffing shortages, that did not occur this time.
But there was still discussion about it, and the reasoning behind it still brought forward here with
Right.
just the prior experience.
Okay.
And I had a question just about the contracts, because our different collective bargaining units have different contracts in place, and so this caught my eye and be like, hey, is this, and it does work with the contract, so.
Okay,
my-
yeah,
my-
because what was said earlier about the
Right,
highway department is like,
exactly.
okay, well, I don't want to,
Yep,
Yeah, some of them precluded, and that's, can be an issue when you're trying to bring in experienced people.
Right.
Yeah.
okay, no, I have no problem. I welcome her back to our community.
yeah, oh, I'm very excited. So excited that I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve, I don't have it in front of me, the exact wording of how to say her name. Angelique Homan in the LEC for beginning November 29th, and at step 4, according to step 4 in the contract.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. We have a motion. Is there support?
I support.
Thank you, Commissioner Swalson. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Much needed deputy, and Angelique is a wonderful employee to have, so I feel fortunate here. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And now we'll move on to Administrator, item 8A, and set the date for our org meeting.
This is pretty self-explanatory. 2022 is looming, approaching at a frightening rate, I would say. And so every year, by statute, the board has to have an organizational meeting to select a chair and vice chair, and also confirm appointments to the various boards and commissions on which commissioners serve. And so we're proposing that organizational meeting occur on January 4th at 8:30 a.m. in this room.
Very good. Any questions, concerns? Shouldn't have any conflicts, eh?
Would think not.
But you never know, I guess. Well then, I'll entertain a motion here.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Sullivan.
I move to approve setting the annual organizational meeting for our board for January 4th at 8:30 a.m. in the Commissioners' Room.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We have a motion. Is there support?
I support.
Thank you, Commissioner Swalson. Motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Yorkie. Moving on to item 8B.
All right, this is kind of an unusual item, one we don't discuss very often, but, the county does operate a couple of outdoor ice rinks in the winter. We have always used a 1962 vintage Zamboni to maintain the ice. That machine died last winter, and replacement parts are no longer available. So we're faced with a dilemma. Do we purchase a new machine? Do we try to go without? We have been looking, and Diane Booth, before she retired on November 1st, had spent much of the year trying to locate used machines that the county could consider for purchase. And it was difficult for various reasons to get feedback. She made many calls that were not returned. But we have recently gotten information on 3 machines that would be available, ranging in cost from $16,500 to $22,200. Those prices would not include shipping and delivery. But they would be used but reconditioned machines that presumably would serve us for years to come without major additional expenses. We have looked into other lower cost options of maintaining the ice. As I mentioned, simply not having a Zamboni would be one option. We could maintain the surface, the skating surface to some degree by just flooding it, but that does not produce the uniformity that a Zamboni would. So for purposes of playing hockey, for example, without a Zamboni, we likely would not be able to maintain a surface that could be used on a regular basis for hockey. The other thing to note, in years past, there was some level of organized hockey here in Cook County. Currently, the need or the demand for that activity is not known. And I'm in the process of reaching out to local folks, to the schools, for example, and to others in the community to understand how much of a demand there would be for organized hockey. I wouldn't, obviously, this is just an information item today, so I'm not suggesting any kind of action. But I think we need to understand the need before we go ahead and make any decisions on this. But I did want to get some initial feedback, generally, assuming there were a level of interest in the community for a quality skating surface, including possibly organized hockey. How does this board feel about the idea of spending the anywhere from 16.5 to 22.2 for a used Zamboni? I guess I'll just pause there and see what your thoughts are.
Well, I do know that a lot of families use it, especially, during the Christmas holidays, and shoveling isn't the same as getting it really surfaced.
Right.
So just from the standpoint of community use, I think it would be good to look into something that would be usable for the next few years.
Mm-hmm. And you raise a good point. So, I mean, when, if we do have ice and it snows, there's the issue of snow removal. I did check with the highway department to see if we have a tractor with a brush implement that could be used to clear it off. We do not. We do have a small skid steer with a scoop that could be used for clearing. The larger rink, I believe, is like an official-sized hockey rink. And so it's a fairly large surface. And not something that could be easily shoveled off by one or two people. So that's another consideration. As in addition to the Zamboni, we need to have some other tools to clear snow when we have a snow event.
Commissioner Svalson.
Yeah, I think the Zamboni is fantastic if you have it, but it is literally a professional ice grooming piece of equipment, and generally, if you had an active league, hockey league, that type of thing, that would make sense to me, because with those aggressive games, it does chew up that ice pretty good. And you're right, I've done it where we just reflood, and and you don't get a perfect by any means, but generally, I think of Zambonis when I'm thinking of either a strong league play type of situation, or you have aspiring or a figure skating club or that type of thing that really needs those pristine conditions on the ice. It just was surprising to me when I found out we had a Zamboni. So I appreciate that you're at least reviewing to see, is it still warranted at this time in our history to have that. I think it's fantastic if you have one, but when we have the opportunity to review it and see what do we really need now, for the community to best service the community and make sure that we get some input. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. And I should add, too, without a clear need for it, I did not include it in the 22 budget proposal. Yeah. So.
Any other thoughts from commissioners?
I just have a question. Do you know where the Zamboni originally came from? Wasn't it from the Hockey Association? Didn't they raise funds for that?
I have no idea.
They may have, I don't know.
That's what I thought years ago, and then, then
That
it was
would
just
make-
stored.
that would
So
make
I thought it
sense.
was theirs, but maybe it just got started. So this is, I know Diane had in her budget, reserves for different pieces of equipment. But this never made that on there?
I don't
as
recall
far-
seeing that in there.
No.
So
it was
I
never-
made-
No,
Makes me
she
think-
spoke of a need when we toured. She
Right.
spoke that there was going to be a need for it, but I didn't hear that the money was set aside for it.
Well, and here we go back to our CIP, other CIP plan, our long-range planning, and
Correct.
these sort of things.
Yeah, but this is a
We
great
don't- yeah.
opportunity to review if it's even warranted now. But, yeah.
And necessary.
Yep.
But if it's important, if it has been important to that department for operations,
Mhm.
it should have been budgeted. A portion of it should have been budgeted for
Yep.
maintenance part.
And-
Plan ahead.
And replacement.
And then when it comes time for replacement, say, oh, maybe I don't need this, I need something else instead.
Yep.
So
Correct.
here we get back to, we need to make sure we're making sure budgets are done properly and across all of our departments.
Yes. And and at the community center board, this has been talked about quite a lot, and more in the assumption that we need it and that we're gonna get it and that we're just shopping for a good price on a reasonable unit and but there's been a lot of changes throughout that whole conversation, and the conversation was going on, I think, even before the warming house was built. And it's still going on as far as what our needs are and what the community wants. And you're right. So my understanding of how a Zamboni is used is just that you still, we're getting too far into it. We can learn more about that if need be. Okay, so that's information. And so, Mr. Yorkie, you were asking the board what the appetite was, and so I think our appetite is going to be largely based on what we find from community need and community input, and I'm sure I'll be hearing an earful from the community center board as well, because it's been kind of this
Just
ongoing.
anticipated that it would happen, I understand.
Yeah,
Okay.
not knowing how exactly,
Yeah,
or
okay.
even when for that matter, and it's still not, I mean, I think we still haven't identified this is the one we should
Gotcha.
go for even,
Okay.
that's been a challenge. So there's plenty of challenges there, but we'll get more information and,
Okay.
Well, and in addition to the equipment, we have to think about staff. You know, we're short-staffed right now, so that is a big part of the discussion as well. Maintenance, who's going to maintain it? Is the highway department going to pick that up when they are short-staffed?
No.
So,
Although it
That's
looks pretty
usually
good
not
on
the
a
way it
resume
is.
that you're a Zamboni driver.
There's usually somebody who will be in charge of clearing the rink and that type of
I mean,
thing. And also what kind of money Diane has already set aside.
Yeah, I guess.
that clear as mud for you, Mr. Yorkie.
Very clear.
If the community center board feels this item is necessary, it should make it into their 2022 budget and be accounted for there.
We'll have more discussions, yeah. I don't think there's I think there's general recognition of the significance of this expense. And so there'll be more discussions and,
Okay.
That moves us on to, I think, to item 8C, Administrator Updates.
All right, just a few things. As you all know, we had our stakeholder meetings with Representative Eklund and Senator Bach on the 29th and 30th of October. Had good attendance both in Lutsen and up at Grand Portage. And I just want to shout out the folks at Grand Portage for working with us to schedule that meeting on Saturday, October 30th. They have a really great facility up there, and I'm saying this because I want to remind community members that it's a really great conference space. If you're having a large event, really great place to have it. Had really great discussions with our representatives on a number of topics, including housing, tourism, economic development, education, healthcare, public health, just a whole range of issues that are important to county residents, and feel that I got a lot of good feedback from people that they found the conversations very productive. So I just want to note that. Other things that are taking up time right now, we are in the process of negotiating new labor agreements with all 3 of our unions. We've had our initial meetings with the negotiating teams, and I would characterize those conversations also as very productive. We're in the process of pulling together the information from all 3 meetings and developing responses to the 3 bargaining units, and we'll be working to schedule follow-up meetings with them here in the coming week or 2. The next thing I want to mention is the HRA board, as noted further down on the agenda, is meeting on November 17th, and I am assisting that body in setting the first meeting, getting the agenda set, and kind of getting everything in place for them to elect their chair and vice chair, establish bylaws, and basically build the foundation for their future operations. And so that's taking a little bit of time. And my expectation is I'll be providing that support to them until they hire an executive director. And at that point, that person would take over sort of the leadership and administrative responsibilities for that group. The other thing that I wanted to mention is I talked earlier about the vacancies that we have, and have really had concerns about the impact that those vacancies are having on our staff. And so I have set up, with lots of help from April Zimmer, set up a series of listening sessions with staff where people can sign up for small group discussions about how vacancies are affecting their operations, to talk about the impact of spreading out the workload to people who are still in the organization, and really trying to identify whether or not that's causing burnout among our staff. You heard Robbie Haas talk about the 2 driver vacancies they have in the highway department. We're really seeking feedback from staff on, if, as we work through this period of attrition and trying to find new people to fill these positions, what steps do we need to be taking to prevent burnout, and are there operational changes that we need to be thinking about to make it through this period? Because what we don't want is to just assume that our existing staff can pick up the workload from these vacant positions and everything's going to be okay, because you can do that to a point and you can do it for a short time, but it's not sustainable over the long term. And with the number of vacancies we have right now, there's no indication that this trend is going to reverse anytime soon. And so I feel it's really important to check in with staff to understand the burden they may be feeling as a result of these vacancies, and to get their help in identifying strategies for getting to the other side of this, where we are better staffed. And obviously housing is a part of that, because we can hire people all day long, but if there's no place for them to land in Cook County, they're not going to be able to accept the offer. So a lot going on there. We just had our first listening session yesterday, and it was very productive, and looking forward to having more opportunities to meet with staff to take the pulse and get their ideas on how we can make it through this difficult period. And I'll pause there for questions.
Commissioner Swanson.
Have we assigned a commissioner to the HRA? Okay, I thought maybe I
We have not.
was suffering I thought maybe I was suffering a senior moment for me. I was sitting here looking at the group going, I don't remember who we assigned.
Yep. So
We'll probably all just go. I don't know. Does that
Well-
work?
Well,
No.
you all could.
Not if they want to get something done.
It is going to be an open meeting, but I mean, the way the board is set up, there are 5 voting members, so
Right.
the commissioner would be a liaison, not a
Correct.
voting member.
Yeah, and that was understood, I think, but I thought it was an important one to at least have somebody in there,
Yeah. We
just
need to
to
appoint
give their
somebody to-
perspective and that type of thing.
But it is an open meeting, so you all could attend. It'll be in this room.
We actually need to post as the county board if the county board, I think, is going to be attending as a quorum.
Oh, Okay,
but.
scratch that.
Yeah, but we could do that. I was joking though.
Okay.
So clearly we all have the interest. Who is available or who volunteers? Let's start there. Commissioner Hawkins
I volunteer.
volunteers. Yeah.
I'm willing to arm wrestle over it, though.
No, I think you might have an easy volunteer there so far, so from what I see here.
Well, and I appreciate that you would do that. We've been on the housing work group together, and you've had an interest in this from the start. So I think that's great.
Well, I'll make the motion to appoint Commissioner Hawkins as ex officio to the HRA board. Is there support?
I'll support.
Any further discussion? Thank you for volunteering.
Thank you for letting me.
Yeah. Well, I know we all want to be involved there, but we can't all do it, so.
Right.
One thing I would add, the housing work group of the Joint Powers group, or what's the other name?
Housing work group.
We just need to settle that once and for all. I keep going back to, or Joint Powers group, because that's how people know it, but I'm still hung up on the fact that it's not actually
It
Joint
doesn't
Powers.
have any power.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that group met yesterday, and we were talking about the fact that, it's great that we have an HRA board. It's great that this body will be focusing on the issue of housing in the community, but the extent of the challenges that we're facing, such that we really need all hands on deck. So the work of that group will continue, and we really need as many people as are interested in the topic of housing and strategies for increasing the availability of housing, affordable housing for working folks, to participate in that dialogue. So I don't want anybody to have the impression that since there's an HRA board, nobody else has to pay attention to housing. We all need to pay attention. We need to be working on it, participating in community dialogues, and making sure that we tap into the talent and interest that is really abundant in the community.
And I would suggest Commissioner Hawkins to come back to that housing work group if there are ways that we can support the new HRA. Since you have worked with that group intimately, you're going to have an understanding of how we can support.
That brings up a good point. I actually see the HRA more as that housing work group forum. Do you kind of see it continuing outside of the HRA?
I do. I see it as a way to support the HRA. There is a lot of work to be done, and the more hands we can get in there, the better build we're going to have.
Yep.
Well, I guess maybe I didn't express myself well. Yeah, no, I think I did, and you answered it. I changed my way of thinking, so, yeah. Thank you. All right, so that was a pause, or was that?
I'm good.
Okay. On to item 9, employee concerns, commissioner concerns. 9A is commissioner reports, meeting updates.
Chair, we didn't vote. We didn't vote on Stacy.
Thank you, point of order, Commissioner Storley, very much. So that's the end of the further discussion with the HRA appointment there. We maybe should have an alternate. It's good to have an alternate assigned. Commissioner
Yes.
Sullivan, would you?
I'd be happy to be the alternate.
Okay, unless Commissioner Saulson or Commissioner
That's
Storley,
fine.
Okay, so maybe I'll amend my motion to include Commissioner Sullivan as alternate.
And I support.
Okay, thank you. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Commissioner Storley, for calling me out there. Moving on to item 9A, Commissioner reports, meeting updates. Any reports? Commissioner Sullivan?
I have, we've been talking about staffing and shortages of people, and CCLEP has a full-time program coordinator, Jessie Carlson, who is moving on. She's been accepted in a doctoral program at UMD, And so we are looking to hire a full-time program coordinator who's dependable and organized and really community-minded. And that person would be involved in coordinating individual and collective projects, promoting and facilitating the increased use of renewable energy and energy efficiency here in Cook County. So I just want to get that word out to our public and see if we can get some good applications. And there are applications online if you go to cookcountylocalenergyproject.org. And then today you graciously approved the airport agreement with RS&H, and we'll be bringing forward some more information from the airport at our November 26th meeting. We're in the process of writing an airport ordinance, and we'll be looking for a letter of support from the county board, as well as from an FAA inspector. And then this ordinance, before it comes here for approval, has to go to the FAA. It's a very complex process. You're going to have some good reading. It's going to be about 25 pages in length, but it basically looks at rules, regulations, safety, and enforcement of any violations. There'll be some language around special events and traffic, parking and speed. But anyway, it's going to be very thoroughly written, and Molly Hicken will be looking at it as our county attorney prior to presenting it to this group. But again, we'll be looking for a letter of support for the ordinance. It goes to the FAA, and then it will come back to us for approval as an ordinance. They kind of trump the county board in FAA regulations. Commissioner Hawkins, I'm sure you know a lot about that.
Do we not have a
We do
ordinance?
not.
Really?
We do not, and many airports don't. But we've had some things crop up over the last couple of years where this is something we need to take on and make sure we're in a good place.
Thank
And
you.
that is it.
Thank you. Any other reports from commissioners?
Well, I don't have a report, but I have a question
Or
that
a
I want to
concern?
make.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, concern, yes.
Yeah.
Our development agreement for these housing projects. I want to know the timeline and, you know, when are we expecting them to be ready for signatures, and what's the review process?
Well, we've started talking to, and originally it was discussed that Molly might actually be the writer of the development agreement, but in talking to her and her time constraints, the other option was to have Bob Tafty, our bond attorney, who has done these in the past, so we started talking to him. And he will, he's looking at it now, so he will do that. It sounds, this is the first date I've heard today where they have a timing issue. So we heard that this morning, January 11th, where MHFA is going to want to know this. So there's your timeline.
Quickly.
I expected it would get done before year end, but now we really should for them to have that ability to get those grants.
I just want to make sure that the language is maybe consistent with what we already have in our county for other projects of this type. And I'm just going to make the suggestion that maybe we want to run this by our HRA board for input and, recommendations, that it's not just Brady and Bob Tofte figuring it all out, because you've got a lot on your plate. So bringing it before the HRA board saying, hey, this is what we drafted. Do you have any concerns, or?
Well, and it would certainly have to come before this board, would it not?
Yeah, it would come before this
board
board.
has to approve them.
Right, so.
I think, even though it's said.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
I didn't feel it that way.
Okay.
When I read it.
No, and I understood that.
I took that as, I might be the
So it's an agreement that-
signatory,
right.
but, no, I'm not going to make those judgments on
Okay.
exactly
Right.
how many rooms or units are for this. Or
Okay,
units are for
that's
that.
what, I just wanted to make sure it just wasn't happening behind the scenes, and.
You dodged
Oh,
one
I'm
there,
done.
Brady. You dodged one there.
I I took it as kind of lighthearted.
So that's not super clear, but there is that January 11th deadline.
Mhm.
I think that's an excellent suggestion that the HRA get some eyes, because we do have some expertise there that I think would be valuable, but the timing of that might be really tricky,
Yeah, if they haven't
because
finalized their bylaws, they might not be able to vote on something.
That's right.
Well, and I'm not saying vote, but advise.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some smart people on there, and I just want to make sure.
And it might be something we send out to them individually, and they can look over it individually and
Give
send back.
comments back.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Because otherwise, yeah, just, they will also need to post for open meeting laws and abide by open meeting laws. So just, that gets tricky timing wise, as it does with us, so. Any other commissioner comments, concerns?
Chair.
Commissioner Storley?
I don't have any concern, but I have a comment. Thursday is Veterans Day, so I would just like to say to all of our men and women of Cook County, thank you for what you have done. It's not easy to be a military person, family-wise and your own self, so we always have a great little celebration up at the high school, which I'm not sure if they're still having it this year.
They are at 2:00 PM.
2 o'clock, okay.
And followed by a dinner at the Birch Terrace for veterans and their spouses.
Okay.
That'll
Good.
be paid for by the American Legion and the American Legion Auxiliary.
And Pat Strand had a wonderful article in the paper last week about the veteran services here, so thank you for what you've done.
Thank you, Commissioner Starley. Well, with that, I think we can move on to item 9B, meetings to note. We've gone through those a number of times. Item 10A is lodging tax comparison. Always eye-opening. And then down to item 11 is the recognition of staff, November anniversaries. We have Jesse Backstrom, the Highway Department, 8 years. Paul Bernier, Recycling Center, 2 years. Grace Grenager, PHHS, 3 years. Ben Hadley, Highway Department, 2 years. Norris Klegstad, Highway Department, 8 years. Steve Olson, Highway Department, 1 year. Jody Turbo Roberts, PHHS, 1 year. Anna Ross, PHHS, 2 years. Joseph Ruth, Land Services, 13 years. Rick Sturm, the Recycling Center, 26 years. Cooper Turnus, PHHS, 6 years. Jim Wallner, Maintenance, 7 years. And Heather Wicklander, Sheriff, 6 years. So thank you all in that list of staff who have dedicated their time and experience to this organization and our community. Greatly appreciate it, and November is a big anniversary month there. Also want to recognize our new hire, Angelique Holman, for Deputy Sheriff. Welcome back, Angelique. That brings us down to item 12, unless there is any other item that a commissioner is going to bring up. So, a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
We have support. I'll support. We are adjourned.